you are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby Podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
Two brothers from Ireland who discuss all things rugby from the point of view of Leinster and Ireland.
That we do.
This is episode 80, which is fair play. Woohoo, we made it this far.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, indeed. And we do, again, have a massive show for you because there's a hell of a lot of rugby that's gone on both last weekend and rugby coming up this weekend. So we're going to start the show with a review segment, just looking back on Bledisloe 2, the big news from the weekend, of course. Then we will look ahead to the Six Nations preview. The Six Nations get back underway this weekend with Ireland facing Italy in the postponed fixtures from earlier this year. Then we'll also take a look at some of the friendlies that are happening this weekend as well. We have Wales taking on France in Paris. Or in France even, and Scotland facing Georgia as well, which is an interesting fixture that we'll get into. And we also have England v the Barbarians, the Quilter Cup as it's known. But the Barbarians back in action, and we'll have a look at that and preview what's to come. And then we'll also just turn our attention to the South American Rugby Championship, which we actually have going on one of our many screens currently. We have Argentina 15 facing Brazil. That'll tell you it's Wednesday night as we're shooting this.
Indeed.
And rather than forego the segment or delay the podcast shoot, we decided we'd try and simultaneously do that. So hopefully by the time we get to covering that, we'll have some idea as to how this match is going to go.
We already have some idea. It's 20 minutes into that game, and it's 19-7 to Argentina. Brazil having taken a 7-0 lead, so it looks like the Argentines have responded. But we will cover that segment later on in the show. We are then going to pivot on. We're going to move on from Test rugby because there's also domestic rugby going on. It is wild out there with the rescheduled COVID games. There's so much going on. So we're going to be looking back on the Champions Cup Final, which took place last week. Mm-hmm. Never has it ever featured so low down in the podcast running order. It's the Champions Cup Final, where Exeter won, and we're going to look ahead obviously to the Premiership Final this week, involving Exeter as well, this time against Wasps. We're going to be previewing that game. We're also going to take a look at round 3 of Super Rugby Unlocked out in South Africa, just taking a look at all the teams and all the games briefly in that tournament. And we're going to just give a quick roundup then of all the other games that are going on this week in domestic rugby, as well as what the rugby news of the week is. That's how we'll round up the show. Yeah, 100%. And if it's your first time here, then you're very welcome and hope you enjoy. And as well, if you enjoy the content and rugby chat like this, please like and subscribe down below. It does help us out a lot. And leave a comment as well, because we enjoy the conversation down below in the comments and love hearing your feedback as well. Absolutely.
So without further ado then, we're going to get on to our first part of the show, which is reviewing Bledisloe 2, which happened last weekend. Obviously a fantastic game in Eden Park. It ended up being the All Blacks 27 versus the Wallabies 7, which is kind of a bit of an arm's length distance in terms of the scoreline. The second half, certainly the first half of the second half, just kind of the All Blacks looking every inch themselves in Eden Park, in their spiritual home, putting the Wallabies to the sword. Definitely a great response from the All Blacks to the kind of indignation of the home draw the week before, and surely, yes, there was always going to be a bite back, despite what some of the Aussie pundits were giving it socks in the week.
Campese is that to eat a bit of humble pie, so he says, but I mean, like, fool me once, etc. with the Australians. You get one positive result and then instantly the smack talk comes out. It's questionable how advisable that is. It sort of went more or less how we said it would go last week, in the sense that it was from the All Blacks point of view, they did have an injection of quite a bit from Beauden Barrett coming into the team, particularly, I would have thought, and then Caleb Clark as well, who's obviously up there in front of us, and he's making headlines for days because he's such a specimen.
I
mean, really, ever since we saw him in the first round of Super Rugby Aotearoa for the Blues, he was always looking like a likely All Black.
Yes,
he's come in and taken.
He started this season with gone up a few levels in terms. It always seems they produce such fantastic wingers, but every year there's one of them or two of them that really do kind of up their game and grab that All Black jersey. The year before the World Cup year, it was Sever Reece burst out of nowhere doing that, and Caleb Clark
now he's playing Mitre 10 rugby. It's amazing how quickly it changes for the wingers.
It's true, they have a short shelf life in the All Blacks, but Caleb Clark just getting started and looking fantastic as well. I suppose we'll take a look at the game itself from the point of view of each team. That's the best way to do it? And starting obviously with honours go to the winner. So we'll look at the All Blacks, who, as we said, managed to make amends for last season, or last week's, or the week before I should say, the Bledisloe 1. and managed to get a win on the books for the new coaching ticket as well, which is obviously vitally important. The fans kind of needed it. It's a bit of confidence to bolster them. It was a fantastic spectacle, a packed Eden Park, which was just tremendous to see. The pre-match pageantry was fantastic. Even
Capo Pango
back, but even the New Zealand anthem that I'm not a huge fan of, and the week previously in Wellington had been butchered by whoever they got to sing it, was sung very well, I thought, and sounded great in Eden Park. It is just their spiritual home, and it was great to see it full of rugby people there. I was reading that apparently it's the first afternoon game in Eden Park since the 90s. They don't tend to do it, and there's arguments that they should, because everyone seems to enjoy it, that kind of thing, but they normally tend to favour later ones for TV.
It's not great for European audience.
It's not for us. We've had to suffer 2 weeks in a row staying up late to do it, but we're invested anyway. But I just thought that was an interesting bit of colour that they don't tend to do it at all.
I can see why, but I digress. It was a great game, and you could see, like, I thought last week there was a certain lethargy about the All Blacks. Like, without getting into sort of the technical stuff, I just didn't think they were quite at the pace of the game where Australia were. Yeah. And there were times when, like, one of their forwards, Tuangafasi or Tui Pilatu or Shannon Frizzell, was winning a contact and moving a bit forward and getting the ball down, and then the ball ended up being slow anyway. Forwards were slow to resource them. There was no offload forthcoming, and then it was just a reset play again. And I think they really did focus on just upping their focus and intent in and around the contact area.
Yeah, and that was the most noticeable difference.
They really did swallow the Wallabies up. I mean, we had made the point about the Wallabies that their job was to sort of that one of the things that you can do to the All Blacks is heap pressure on them, and you've seen Ireland do that and England do that by keeping your hands on the ball, minding the pill and the contact, making them go through a lot of tackles. And then we saw elements of the Wallabies trying to work that in, but the way in which the All Blacks sort of swallowed it up and really did out-muscle them and just didn't allow them to get over the game line for the most part, and really didn't lose any of those individual battles when Australia were on the ball for large periods of the game. It swallowed them up and left the Wallabies looking tired, and it was a very physical performance from the All Blacks.
Yeah, well, they did exactly, in terms of what you were calling for last week, it was exactly what the doctor ordered. They were the week previous, they had been just kind of played the young Wallaby side into it a little bit, and you had guys like Phillip looking excellent even at 80 minutes making plays, whereas this time he was battered and bruised and subbed off, which is exactly what you wanted. They really did emphasise that physicality, and both sides of the ball, with and without it, they kind of got up out of line and smashed them, which is fantastic to see. Obviously, the All Blacks with a real kind of intent, and as you said, it was that kind of mean contact that they did bring. It was attritional. It was definitely, like, they weren't rolling over. Like the week previously, we'd cited that Richie Mo'unga kept getting hit late. To be fair, Beauden Barrett was hit late a few times in this instance, mostly by was it Phillip? No, it was number 8 Wilson. Was smashing him late, but he would just keep getting up and making play after play. They weren't.
Speaking of the devil, Beauden Barrett, I think what a difference he makes to this All Black side, and we'll touch just in a little while. We'll touch on sort of the potential issues that we still have with the All Blacks, but Beauden Barrett is such a phenomenally good thing for this All Blacks team.
Especially in that first half when it was tight. Some of the plays out of them were fantastic.
They struggled a little bit on multi-phase to create, especially early in that first half. The centres weren't linking all that well, despite having decent individual performances. Goodhue and Leonard Brown, they didn't link that well with one another, and Mo'unga as well. They found it difficult to actually create from a dead position on multi-phase. Except when he got the ball into Barrett's hands, and he's such an X factor. Like Caleb Clark as well, but he was mostly featuring off kick return. But Beauden Barrett coming into that line is just he's one of the most phenomenal athletes I've ever seen play the game. I think he's without question the best player in the world right now.
Yeah, I think so too. Because he couples, like, he is a tremendous athlete with some speed and such a kind of rangy gait. He's great on the high ball, but it's his rugby IQ really that sets him apart. He really reads the game and the scenario so well, and gets them humming in a different way. They really did miss him. It's an intangible tangible, like Beauden Barrett is in your team where he's not, and it makes a huge difference no matter what the team is, the All Blacks being one of them who really do lean on him these days. He's their key playmaker from 15 or from 10. But there were other performers as well who stood up. I actually thought Anton Leonard-Brown, who kind of seized the jersey, looked sharp, particularly on defence in the first half, and then got a head knock and had to go off. And it was kind of a little disconnected from then. Goodhue didn't have his best game, I thought, in the centre.
He didn't create all that well. What he did do is set up 2 tries.
He did. His touch for that for the second, or was it the second try?
The Jordy Barrett try.
The Jordy Barrett one. That was my favourite try of the bunch for them, because it was an example of really good multi-phase, and he just did his job perfectly. Drew the man and gave
it was a very smart little piece of fix and give rugby, and I also thought his carry it was a bit soft from the Wallaby point of view through Tamua and James O'Connor.
Yes,
but it was very
Aaron Smith one.
Very good carry, sharp right through the middle of them, and sort of exemplified the difference making that was the All Blacks' performance this week, where last week Australia were on that fever pitch and that edge, that it was the All Blacks this week, and they were dominating contacts, and Goodhue I think did a great job just setting it up off the scrum, simple play. But if you get your body right and you do it sharply enough, and the Wallabies are loose enough, it's gonna be hard to defend.
And actually, credit where it's due as well. Aaron Smith was sharp as a razor all game, and that was another instance. He grabbed that first try. Thank you very much. Like Ned Hannigan, a little bit of a soft pillar folding back on the short side. He recognises it immediately and just pick and go and dot down. Like it's such a great thing. The game itself was played with such a great tempo, and Australia were a big part of that as well. They were willing to play what seemed like Dave Rennie rugby, but the All Blacks as well, ferocious in their tempo, and it was good to see. Like after that bust up with of Goodhue and that carry, like they're a lesser team, and certainly a lot of Northern Hemisphere teams would be slowing that up all of a sudden, because you're a metre out, getting a pod of 3 forwards in to try and rumble into 3 other forwards and slow it all up. No, there wasn't any of that. Like it was an instant contact win, and it should have been an instant try, and it was really well taken for the lead there. And it was very tough for the Wallabies to come back from a start like that, for away from home in Eden Park, everything kind of against you, and then it's just a dot down try, and suddenly you're chasing the game. And that, like, they remained disciplined for large periods of it. They didn't kick as much ball as the first thing. Certainly in the first half, they didn't kick as much ball as they had been the week previously, which was a good learning. I thought they were trying to go through those phases, but as you say, it was just the physicality of the All Blacks who really kind of monstered them. Even like when they were trying to do that and trying to build the pressure, they couldn't really couldn't dominate enough collisions to get the scores on the board, and then it ended up that they looked a little unclinical again in the final third. So certainly they had a few chances. Tupou with that short line, just a turnover at the like some of those first half chances really needed to be taken for the Wallabies to get anything out of this game.
There were a few, all right. The double movement play was shocking.
That was in the second.
Really, really.
Was that Paenga-Amosa, or was it?
Yes, I think it was Paenga-Amosa. But I'm not 100% sure actually.
It was a number 2 anyway.
But it was as Brazil scored a try. Well, hey, but it was a really, really sloppy play. They were going to get that try, and then just the impatience of it, they failed to do it. Likewise, Corbett bashing his way over, failing to ground the ball. A few of those moments, great defence from the All Blacks by contrast, but a few of those moments just very sloppy from the Wallabies, and a touch of white line fever and panic about them. But it was a consequence of the pressure they put on them. I thought, like, all through that pack, Tuangafasi, Tuipilotu, Sam Kane was massive again.
Yes, he was.
Tupou Vai had a great game. Shannon Frizzell, but it was similar performances from all of them in that they were just edging the physical battle with their opposites. And dominating the collision zone as a consequence, especially when Australia had the ball, and that left them largely unable to do anything. And then I think you had that last that Ardi Savia try. We haven't mentioned Ardi Savia. I thought he was potentially man of the match.
He was brilliant.
He was one of the ones that I was really thinking did look lethargic last week. I thought he was kind of sloppy, and I actually was thinking maybe drop him and get him off the bench. But now, the other day he looked every bit the guy who was nominated for World Player of the Year. He was everywhere. He was all over the ball. I
didn't see him lose a contact at all on either side of the bill.
But for his try, that was sort of the Wallabies. Their backs were broken at that point, in the sense that they had the ball in their own half and they just kicked it into the sky down the throat. It was a tired.
We were worried for them even the phase before when they were just sluggishly resourcing a ruck to set up. You can see O'Connor dropping deep, and it's just like, they're just going to kick this in the air, aren't they? And sure enough, on comes the very hungry Caleb Clark to come barnstorming back at them with
one of the
best carries you'll ever see in terms of kick return. But it teed it up like
it's an easy game sometimes when you're dominating the physical element of it, and the Wallabies were being dominated. Hence they kicked the ball into the sky. Hence they were flat-footed on the chase.
Yeah.
And Caleb Clark just ran through them. They were already tired. They were falling off tackles. They finally got him down, except no one held him, so he got back up and kept going.
Yeah.
And then that was all she wrote. Artie Sevilla boshed in. Didn't even need to throw the skip.
He did.
Pass.
Yeah. There was a pass to be given, but it was just such was their supremacy in the contact zone that it wasn't even a risk to just bump off the winger there and go in for Artie because he was feeling it that much. So they kind of broke the back of the game there. And then the only kind of downside, Joe Moody getting knocked out, which actually contributed to the one try that Australia did score, which was a Ned Hannigan break as a result of a really bad tackle from
it was like
he
a
got
UFC
his head
knockout.
He got his head on the wrong side and ate a knee, and he was lights out before he even hit the deck. Very nasty one. But the silver lining from that is that Hodgman, the Highlander, came in and on debut and looked fantastic. He won a scrum penalty, was the first contribution he made in a match where the scrum had been ding dong. It wasn't complete All Black supremacy. But Hodgman came in and really changed that.
Yeah, he looked great. He's brilliant. He's been with the Highlanders for a few years. Mm-hmm. Like, very industrious player around the park. Looks to be perhaps a shoe-in to start for the All Blacks for the next season, I would say, especially if Joe Moody has always been a little dodge for me, as much as he does play for the Crusaders. I think against the bigger teams, the South Africans, the bigger packs, the bigger packs, he's a guy who might struggle. Yeah. So finding a new guy is crucial. The only thing I'd worry about Hodgman is his frame is a little sort of long for a loose head prop.
Yeah, it's unusual. I noticed his neck isn't quite as chunky as your normal loose head prop kind of thing, which. Well, like if he can scrum aggressively with it, it's fine.
He was scrumming brilliantly, and he came on and had a massive impact
for sure.
So I definitely think Hodgman is a huge positive, and he's a guy I think they're going to run with at loose head.
It might be one of the most positive aspects of the whole game for them when you think obviously Clark was all razzle dazzle, but it's great to see a loose head prop come in and scrummage like that for the All Blacks.
It's
that was
something
fantastic.
They've been missing for sure.
For sure, and just. What else was there? I'm giving credit where it's due. Mo'unga, actually, compared to the week before, he managed to, they were moving it at their pace and dominating the contact inside, so he had a little bit more time and it was a little less roughed up. But he was expecting those hits. He put on a little bit of footwork, certainly he made a little half break linked up with Umanga Jensen in the first half while he was on for Anton Linnert-Brown, who then fed Dane Coles rather nicely. Put Dane Coles with one of the greatest steps you'll ever see out of a hooker, putting Corabetti on his ass, which was great.
Stutter step,
He's fantastic. One caveat I would attach to Coles' performance though is that the line-out was not as short as it was as it was with Taylor and Whitelock, which is the thing. Like Whitelock and Taylor weren't in that, which obviously means it's a different line out. And in the first half it was a little stuff they got a couple of them wrong, but then they kind of dialed it in, and for sure Vi really stepped up and made a good impact as well. They were just much bigger and stronger than the Wallaby counterparts, and you were starting to see the lightness of the Loto-Phillip combination in the row. Certainly they were struggling by the end. I know Loto played the full 80, and because Phillip was bruised
he played okay. Like from a Wallabies point of view, there isn't too much panic in that sense.
No.
I think they for large parts they tried to give as good as they got, but they couldn't quite get the platform. Like the game was never about Nick White in the way that it was last week.
It was more Aaron Smith. To be honest,
and so those that sort of forward pack area is a concern for them. Obviously, having to lose Pete Samu was not ideal.
That wasn't ideal.
Although Ned Hannigan stepped in and played a fine game, I thought.
He did. Good and bad though. He had some good touches, good bad. I'm not convinced by Ned Hannigan, or I'm nearly convinced that he's not really the test answer. I think Pete Samu was missed for sure, because I think on balance they were just a little lighter for not having him, and certainly with Tupou had a great first half again, combative again, very physical at the line. Taking him off at half time was probably a pre-planned move, because they saw him diminish a little in the first test in the second half. But I think it was proven to not really be the right thing, because Alatoa kind of struggled to make an impact.
Hodgman gave Alatoa a right go at the scrum as well, and then you just felt the loss of Tupou all over the pitch.
Because he was their only forward really getting go forward a lot of the time.
Now that said, you can't have him on the field for 80 minutes.
No, he's a tight end prop.
It doesn't work, and he also he's a massive man who plays with almost reckless dynamism. He doesn't mind his cardio at all out there,
which is fine. You want him to dump it and use it all in a winning performance is obviously what you want from him. But Yeah, it was unfortunate that he wasn't there, and then they kind of struggled even more from there. The other big news was Tamua. Injured as well, which
out for the rest of the year.
Out for the rest of the year, which is ouch because he was pivotal for them in that 12 role seemingly, and certainly the decision to bring on Pataya in his stead. Although Pataya looked great at times with ball in hand, really is he's someone I would get in. But the point you were making is that Paisami and Pataya are both kind of 13s, and it left them a little disjointed and a lot more vulnerable. Like the All Blacks didn't really score with Tamua on the pitch, and then they started to heftily score past half time with Tamua gone. And you were making the point that Reece Hodge came on. They finished the game with a 3/4 line of O'Connor, Hodge and Pataya, and it looked good. That could be their best option.
Yeah, and Irai Simoni is the other one who's a 12, who's an out and out 12, who's also in the squad, who hasn't got a go yet, and I think he will get a go in the Tri Nations as it now is.
Yes.
But yeah, in terms of learnings bringing forward from a Wallabies point of view, there were just little areas here and there. They failed to really stop the All Blacks machine from trundling. They didn't get in over the ball. They didn't get those chop tackles behind the gain line. They didn't quite play with the intensity that they needed, and they struggled at times.
Yeah.
But and then the other area is just clinicality.
Yeah, they didn't take their scores that they could have made a tighter game of it. To be honest, even with like a 20-point defeat looks huge, but when you consider some of the double movement instance and then the Corabetti try that wasn't. There were chances even in that 20-point defeat for the Wallabies to be in that game.
100%. They weren't quite. I think it was something we said last week in our preview. Was just that the factor of being right at that sort of fever pitch, right, mentally and physically dialed in, acknowledging that this is a big performance. Is a very, very difficult place to be at 2 weeks running.
Yeah.
And really, last week the All Blacks weren't at it and the Wallabies were.
Yeah.
And this week the Wallabies weren't at it and the All Blacks were, and that's
them.
sort of the thing. The All Blacks do have advantages over the Wallabies in the sense that their guys are like Super Rugby Aotearoa was played at a ferocious pace with more physicality even than Super Rugby AU, its counterpart. And so that's just a factor. That's that they're always going to struggle with that.
Well, it's always going to be a step up playing.
It's always going to be a step up playing the All Blacks.
The All Blacks in Eden Park is the step up. It's possibly the toughest fixture in World Rugby.
But they're going back to Australia, and they're going to be playing an All Black side, which, while ferociously physical at times, and like the real bugbear for the Wallabies is that they never ever got them to suck in.
Yeah.
Like if you took a wide shot of the line, the All Blacks line was across the pitch for the whole game. They never ever
because they weren't taking a backward step.
Yeah,
they were winning these contacts,
and so they have to kind of make those adjustments, carry a little sharper, put a bit more footwork on it, but also do what you've seen French teams do to catch the All Blacks, and you've seen Australia do in the past, and you saw a little bit of it in the first Bledisloe test when they were sort of looping around with blindside wings, but flooding wee channels full of players, getting guys over the gain line, like having Taniela Tupou link up with players. That's the next step.
It is
in terms of developing that offense. And then obviously executing, you have to be at that level if you're going to beat the All Blacks. And it's a tough task for them because they play them so bloody awful.
It's true. But there are definitely huge positives for Australia to take from it. One thing it's just as a unit, they seem to have bought into the Dave Rennie system. They look like a Dave Rennie side. We've been used to watching Glasgow and the Chiefs before that. They play with a lovely tempo, a lovely flair. They really did get some purchase. They caused some questions. It was just, again, as we said, the last third, the little bit of nous and that little bit of just, it comes with experience, but just that controlling element, not quite there yet, but it's getting there. They certainly look a tidy team. It didn't help that key men like Corabetti had a shocker, obviously a lot of drop balls. Banks as well, who looks rock solid, but he was kind of off the pace of the game, and it was his forward pass that was the very last play of the game as well. It was just
Banks is an interesting one where he's very much not a distributor, and I think that Australia are still searching for that second distributor because Tamua hasn't been it. Like even Reece Hodge in there, I wonder if he's it. It might come down. It might come down. I was going to say, it might come down to being Pataya if Pataya can start in at 13. He was definitely trying things. Not all of them came off, but there's a couple of times now. Last week it was Tamua, and this week it was Banks who found themselves in that second distributor role and couldn't execute the pass. And Banks, to be fair to him, it's not his game. He's a kicking fullback. He's a containing fullback.
And he's a fullback who'll win contacts. Like he'll carry to the line and win the contact and set it up, and he does that job pretty creditably. Even in that defeat he did it well, and actually encouraging signs from Dangunu on the other wing, who fielded an excellent high ball at one point, which is just great to see as well, because for a young man that's kind of the area when with a razzle-dazzle winger who's all flash going forward, you do sometimes worry about those kinds of factors of the international game. It's great to see him get really high, win the ball confidently. So there's definitely, again, loads of signs of encouragement for the Wallabies. Not quite the finished article yet, but a good start for Dave.
No,
really.
it's definitely not a catastrophe by any stretch. 20-point loss in Eden Park. It could have been worse.
Yeah, it's about the spread sometimes, really.
Sometimes it is, but that does bring me just to my final caveat just before we wrap up the segment, which is just about the All Blacks, and it's just the sense of
well done. Well, for sure.
Yeah,
great win.
I have a little concern about the All Blacks going forward, and it remains to be seen whether it'll bear fruit. But it's sort of based on what we've been seeing over the last few years, which we've mentioned a few times on the show, which it's expected, generally speaking, that Foster's tenure is sort of a continuation of what's been going on under Hansen, and you're seeing signs of that in the sense that they're becoming a little similar to what other teams are like in terms of they like to play physical rugby, they like to play smart rugby. They're giving out to themselves for not taking drop goals, etc. And while they should have taken that drop goal, obviously, I didn't see quite the clinicality from the All Blacks that they are at their very best, and I didn't see the creativity from the All Blacks that they are at the best. And it's very harsh because Bowden Barrett was making break after break after break.
As was Caleb Clark.
But on a few occasions they were dropping balls, they were playing a little frantically, they weren't picking the sharpest lines. On a few other occasions they kicked ball away where they shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And I just think they leaned heavily into winning the physical battle, which makes sense against Australia and it might make sense against Argentina.
Yeah.
But the only concern that you get there is actually that 3/4 line, all playing quite well individually, isn't actually linking that well, which is Mo'unga, Goodhue and Leonard Brown.
Yeah.
It's not actually creating, if you look at it right now. There's guys trying to win contacts, but they aren't actually opening defences up and putting their class players in space. Most of what the All Blacks are doing that's good in terms of their running game is coming off chaos plays.
Yeah, or tight carries. Like you have the likes of Tui Pilatu looks ginormous when he's rampaging through the Wallabies, which is great. Like he's a fantastic asset and he's great at the line out. Will he look the same force when he runs into the likes of an Etzebeth or a Mauro Itoje? Well, probably not is the answer. And the power game is very much the dominion of this. Well, the Springboks are top of it, but England as well will play with that. France will bring a big pack most of the time. Ireland will do so. It's like if you're the All Blacks, you're putting yourself into a larger group of teams playing with that style, whereas what used to set them apart was speed and skill set and just backing that the whole way to the hilt. Which it's just a curiosity. We don't know yet.
It's hard to critique, but my fear for them is that they're going into a tournament with two sides that are smaller than them, and their instinct is going to be, let's bully them physically, let's get Tuamafasi, let's get Tui Pilatu on the ball, let's get Artie Sevilla in a bit of space, and we'll just crash through them, and it'll probably work. And they'll probably have a huge hype train, but there are actually and I hope that they identify this, they are missing some elements in terms of their creativity and in terms of their phase play that isn't that sharp and isn't quite All Black rugby. And then also just the errors on occasions. Like it was a 20-point game and we say Australia could have made it closer, but Australia gave them loads of ins. They made knock-ons, they made loose kicks, and on a number of occasions, especially in that first half, they came to naught, which is not very like the All Blacks. So their clinicality was suffering a little on counter-attack, which isn't quite like them, although we've seen it now 2 weeks, and they're lacking a little bit of creativity. And my only concern is what happens when they get matched up front. Can they open up a team, or does it take a similar shape to how it took last year against England?
We don't know yet. But no, with that said, that little caveat, we will just still say 20-point win, well done. The All Blacks, it was a great spectacle in Eden Park. Fair play and commiserations to the Wallabies, but we look forward to seeing that run back on Australian soil.
Roll on the Tri-Nations. That was a lot of fun. Good 2-match series of Bledisloe, some great rugby to get in. And
fantastic standard all round.
Really great betting back in for Test rugby.
Yeah, 100%. So with that we will move on, because Test rugby is continuing in the Six Nations. We have the Guinness Six Nations returning after quite a long period of uncertainty. With this weekend, it's the first fixture back, which was the first fixture postponed, which is Ireland-Italy. But we'll just do a brief kind of synopsis as to where the table is, because there's interesting permutations on, and every team kind of has stuff to play for. So currently we have England sitting atop with 13 points. France also on 13, but in second just on points difference. Then
by the way, that is 2 points.
2 points difference in that. Scotland in third with 10 points. Then Ireland with 9 points. Fifth is Wales with 7 points. And sixth, as you'd expect, is Italy with no points.
Although crucially, Ireland and Italy have a game to play. So the remaining games are Ireland and Italy this Saturday, and then next Saturday is Halloween, and it's also Super Saturday. So that's a bit of fun, given Halloween is cancelled out here in Ireland.
Yes,
we're going to have all the rugby to feast upon in its stead.
Yes.
So we've got Wales, Scotland, which is a bit of a dead rubber in all honesty, but then Italy, England, and then France, Ireland, and the permutations are as such. Ireland can guarantee victory with 2 bonus point victories over Italy and France. They can't be stopped. They're on 9 points. England and France on 13. 2 bonus point wins puts them on 19. Uncatchable.
Yeah.
So Ireland win if they manage that, but obviously a bonus
Big
point
ask.
win away in France for this Ireland team seems a far cry from something that might actually happen.
A far cry from likely.
Yes. England can secure a victory by matching the French winning margin against Ireland in their game away in Italy. So they're more or less level with France.
Yeah.
They're 2 points clear. If they beat Italy by more than France beat Ireland, they will win the Six Nations, assuming Ireland don't do what we just said.
Yes.
Which they probably won't. So England pole position, beat Italy at a canter, and the Six Nations is probably yours.
Yes.
France, who were on course for a Grand Slam, if you'll recall, right before the very last game, I think before it was cancelled against Scotland in Murrayfield, they were well beaten, and they got a stupid red card again.
Yes.
They keep plaguing the French in big games, and found themselves comfortably second best against Scotland, and that was a bit of a slap in the face for them. Although, in my opinion, the Grand Slam was beyond this French team, as good as they had looked anyway.
Yes.
But they could win the Six Nations still if they spank Ireland by a higher margin of points than England beat Italy, which would obviously make for a rough day for us.
It would, or a brilliant day for Italy is another potential one. Because there's isn't there in theory Scotland could technically win as well, which involves a massive Italy showing.
Yes. Scotland need to secure a victory against Wales.
Yes.
Then they need Italy to secure back-to-back wins over Ireland and England. And then they need Ireland to bounce back from that shock defeat to Italy by beating France.
Yes.
And if any of the teams who we needed to lose in that conversation pick up a losing bonus point in their loss, Scotland will need the try bonus in their game against Wales. So hey, it would be quite a story.
It would be a fantastic story. I'll take things that won't happen for 10,000. But yes, so it's a fun dynamic coming back into the Six Nations with so much time having gone by, and still a lot of teams in contention. Obviously, it was peak excitement last spring when all of this should have been being resolved. It was teeing up rather nicely, and we have put that pin in it. And now that we come back and take it out, yeah, it's still pretty interesting, isn't it? The mix of teams.
It is. I mean, I don't think any of there's sort of 3 sides still in the competition. Obviously, Wales sort of very much in limbo.
In post World Cup, post Warren Ball kind of.
They looked a shadow themselves, and they had some injuries, and they weren't defensively at the level that they usually are.
Yeah.
So they were kind of out of the conversation quickly. But even among the 3 sides who were still in contention, Ireland, England, and France, there was definitely a lot of imperfection. All sides were faltering at times. England were sloppy at times. Ireland looked the same as ever and were exposed thoroughly by England and Twickenham.
Yes.
And France, while good in patches, also fell asleep in patches and generally played just a bit loosely.
Yes.
And got a bit of luck. Like in the chaos, they managed to beat Wales in Cardiff, which included a crucial intercept for Entomac when Wales were steaming up the left wing. And so, the bounce of the ball was going with them right up until they rocked into Murrayfield.
They came into Murrayfield, and it was a cold day in spring, and they didn't
get the bounce of the ball, and then instead of digging their heels in and grinding out a result, They sort of floundered and then gave away a red card and then lost the game and lost the Grand Slam, and that's my number one concern with France. It's just when things go wrong for them. It just tends to go very wrong. They don't really know how to dig a result out of a bad performance.
No, a lot of the time that's true for sure.
But overall, I would say that England have been the most impressive side.
I think that's fair to say.
And I think they're firm favourites.
I would also think that's fair to say.
Pains me to say that.
Yeah, well, like I'd love to see it from an Ireland point of view, but I still agree with you.
Almost more than I'd loving to see it, I'd love to see Ireland earn it.
Yeah.
And if we were to win the Six Nations, don't get me wrong, I'd be pleased as all hell. It'd be a fantastic achievement, but it would definitely... I don't know if there's ever been a side who's won a Six Nations and lost a game as thoroughly as we did in Twickenham.
Yes.
So it would be a curiosity. It's like, hey, we're the best team in Europe, but we got stuffed against the English.
Yeah.
So we'd have France to thank thoroughly if we do make it, but England for me...
The favourites, I think the bookies would agree with you. But then with that, I suppose, with all that said and done, that little wrap up, we will move on to previewing the one game that we have this weekend, which happens to be Ireland and Italy. Yeah, exciting times to see us back in action. Delighted to see it. It'll be on Saturday, October 24th. That's this Saturday. 3:30 kick-off at the Aviva Stadium, and the referee is going to be Matthew Carley. Matt Carley getting a big Six Nations.
Matt Carley got a load of stick for his performance. This is way back now. He was in the Six Nations and he had a couple of performances where he was getting a load of stick, including that Scotland game. Mm-hmm. I think he's okay without being great. Hopefully he's not going to be
sometimes
too much
concerns
of
on
a
communication
factor.
again. He's grand speaker. I just wish he would tell people no before blowing the whistle. That's my main bugbear of any ref. Sometimes Carly's guilty of not doing it. It was a great, actually, Angus Gardner last week was a great example of how to do it right. At every breakdown, vocal, communicate, tell them yes, no, maybe so, or before you don't just blow the whistle and have all the breakdown, both sides of players look up at you and go, what?
Yes, indeed. I couldn't agree more. That's obviously a massive factor.
But then just to wrap up the scenario, we did outline it before. Ireland need a bonus point win from this game, and they need a bonus point win from the game after it as well.
So they absolutely positively need a win and 4 tries here if they're to be in the mix come Super Saturday.
So don't believe any of the interviews where you hear people talk about we need to win the game first. And all
frankly,
this.
I never get more passionate and more annoyed than when I'm talking about Ireland. But frankly, we shouldn't be hearing that from Irish players. Yeah. You shouldn't be hearing someone say, no, first we have to focus on the wing. No, you don't. You need 4 tries. Win is no good to you. Yeah. Win is no good to you.
Yeah.
So you want to win the Six Nations, you got to get 4 tries and a win. That's the task in front of you, and you should be honest about it.
And take the corner from the first minute.
I'll be fuming if I see them taking 3-pointers next week against France and Paris as well. No, you understand the situation. You need a bonus point win.
Yeah.
You need to score tries, and it's actually from an Ireland point of view, it's a great test for them. This has been a team that has been abject with the ball at times and really, really slow and ponderous to do anything, and more than happy to take forever to score or take 3-pointers or to win a game 16-3 that they should have won by a lot more when they're dominating a game. So it's a great little task. Like if I was to line out a little 2-game task for Andy Farrell's team, it would read something like this. Go get 4 tries in 2 games in a row against decent teams. Obviously Italy have been a little behind, and we haven't talked about Italy yet, but they've actually yet to register a point in this competition.
Yeah. So as far as warming to the task, it's an Italy game. It's a home game against Italy. 4 tries should be expected.
They've yet to register a point at the on the table. They've also been nilled twice.
Yeah,
they lost 42-0 to Wales and a home 17-0 defeat to Scotland in Rome.
That's probably the low light of the whole campaign for them. But that's poor.
Then the other game where they actually did manage to score points, they scored a try with I'm not sure if you remember this, but you remember when I remind you, they scored a try with a couple of minutes to go in the game, or frankly a couple of seconds. Which was their 3rd try, and made it about 35-22 to France.
Right.
And then they ran back, drop kicked the conversion really, really quickly, and so they were in a scenario where a try could get them 2 log points, and then French kicked the restart deep as he would, and they kicked it straight out.
Baffling displays of ridiculousness, yes, and they deserve their nil point for that kind of carry-on.
Both sides, I think it's fair to say, huge work-ons going into this, and we'll take a look at the games from the perspective of each.
Yes, indeed.
Starting with Ireland, who's the one squad that we actually have for this game. It was announced this afternoon. Italy are keeping their cards close to the chest for the time being. 6 changes.
Yes, indeed. Some good, some bad. My first reaction to this team was a bit of disappointment in terms of some of the options they've gone with. The main one is Conor Murray. Can't understand, he's just there on reputation because his form is in shock. He's in shocking form.
And to flip it the other way, from the negative to the positive, it's the main negative is Kieran Marmion for me.
Yeah.
Because I think Marmion for Connacht has been sensational.
Yeah, he's the best
and he's a
halfback
guy
in the country.
who's proven at test level. It's not a one-to-one comparison with the John Cooley Ulster thing. He's a guy who's proven...
Or Gibson Park.
Yeah,
he's on the bench.
He's proven at test level and he's left out of the squad. And now it's can you throw him into the French game is going to be the dynamic.
Yeah.
Especially if these boys look okay against Italy, which it can be hard not to.
Yes.
So from that point of view, I think that's, in terms of Ireland generating a tempo for themselves, that's a bit of a deflating one.
Yeah.
It is good to see Sexton back, and then there's a curiosity. There's a curiosity with two selections. So first of all, in the back row, they've gone with
one of the bigger disappointments.
Yeah. Well, they've gone with Will Connors at 7, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah. He's a Josh van der Fleer-esque player, probably without not being quite as good as Josh, but he's a guy who his game is about defence. He gets out of the line brilliantly, he makes chop tackles, he stops teams at source. He's actually a decent counter weapon to what Italy are going to bring with their Bram Staines around the fringes and their Negris.
Shoot up and create a good line speed on defence and normally stick good solid low tackles. Yeah,
so
tackles.
Happy to see Will get his first cap, and obviously that's a nice bold call. I like to see it. And then the other two options are this is what baffles me. I mean, it's Caelan Doris at 6 and CJ Stander at 8. And Caelan Doris is an out and out footballer. He's a number 8. He's not a number 6. He probably doesn't have the heft to play number 6. He plays at a club level, but at test level he's a number 8. He needs to be out at the base of the scrum making plays. And then meanwhile at number 8 we have CJ Stander, who just couldn't be less of a number 8 and couldn't be more of a number 6.
Yes, it's true. That's what's been baffling me for years about the Irish team. I thought it was consistently a wrong call under Joe Schmidt. I think it remains the wrong call now. I think ideally if you're putting together a perfect rugby team, and probably in 10 years this will be true, but all of your players from 1 to 50, actually from 1 to 23, are able to throw a left-handed skip pass on the run at full tilt and stick their man. That needs to be a factor. It doesn't, at the moment, that doesn't quite need to be the case. But one thing that is 100% true, has been true for the last 10 years, is that the number 8 is not a ball-carrying role exclusively. It's a playmaker. The number 8 needs to be a link man, needs to be a distributor. He needs to have a pass. He needs to have an accurate 15 to 20 yard spin pass off either hand. And it's easy to look at Billy Vunipola and Dwayne Vermeulen and make the mistake of thinking these guys are the best number 8s in the world and they're just big ball carriers. But they're not. They're distributing carriers. They suck in the men with their heft, but then put other guys in space. It's been a bugbear of mine with CJ for a while. He's a hefty guy. He is a good number 6. He's rock solid. But he's not a distributor, and it's been an issue for Munster, even if they haven't cited it, haven't noticed it. It contributes. Even if he has a good game, he makes a lot of carries, leads defensive line. It's a little factor. But couple that with the fact that Conor Murray's in there, it's just going to all add up to not quite distributing the way you want to, and looking a little sluggish with the ball.
That 8-9 axis lacks a bit of speed, and there's no question about that. And I think that CJ is definitely good value for being in the starting team. I think he's going to be going forward, but I think he is a number 6. I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And likewise, the exact same scenario has arrived in the back 3, where they've put Stockdale from wing to fullback, and then put an uncapped debutant on the wing. Yeah. And I get what they're doing. Hugo Keenan, by the way, is the lad's name, but he's playing left wing. First of all, he's a natural right wing. No, he's not. He's a natural fullback. He's only ever slotted in to play right wing. And now, I guess the idea is, we have these guys on debut, so let's just not put them in the high profile positions like fullback and number 8. Let's hide them a little.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, I think it's a mixed message to send to the guy.
Yeah.
It's we trust you, but we don't really trust you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you're playing him out of position. Hugo Keenan's not a left winger. He probably doesn't have the out and out pace to play left wing. He's been nothing but solid in terms of club rugby at 15. He's out here playing.
He's actually as well. They picked Larmour at fullback the week prior and him on the wing, and then the week after they actually switched those two
because
because Keenan gets into the game more from 15.
Yeah, that's right. Leinster did that exactly, and it's because he's a natural 15. He's not a winger at all, and so he's not really going to be given the chance to deliver on what he brings to the game.
Yeah.
So that's just a frustration for me, and likewise with Daragh, who's a natural number 8 and a brilliant footballer, as you say.
It is, as you say. It's the young lad not being trusted. It's the notion that we'll better play it safe by putting CJ at 8 and giving him that responsibility. But it's kind of backwards. It's really not a good call.
No, so those are the ones I don't like. There's quite a bit I do like in this squad. Obviously there's injury issues throughout the team. There's Andrew Porter has just made it, so is Johnny Sexton, but there's no Ryan Baird, who was brilliant and lock and was definitely be on track to be fast tracked right into the test team by the end of this autumn, and it's a shame to see him out injured. Massive shame, in fact. One of my favourite Leinster players of the year.
Henderson has found himself out not through injury but through suspension due to a red card he picked up a couple of weeks back, so he's unavailable, and that paves the way for Tadhg Beirne, who was it's good. It'll be good to see Tadhg Beirne back in a green jersey as well. He's kind of been out of the mix for a wee while, so like with every door closed there's another one opens, which is nice to see.
The squad in general, like the tight 5, quite happy with Cian Healy. 98 caps. He's going to make his 99th appearance. He's going to make the 100 by the end of this autumn, which is fantastic for him. What a servant. Totally happy with Cian Healy in there. Totally happy with Rob Herring at hooker, incumbent, definitely worth his jersey. Andrew Porter likewise. Tadhg Beirne and James Ryan, no issues. We talked about the back row. We have Murray in at 9, which is, I think, very incorrect. Sexton in captaining from 10, 91 caps, and also on track to make his 100th this season. What I do like is a little bit of what's outside that. I like Bundy Aki. I mean,
he's the form player in the country.
Panicked a little bit that they might not pick Bundy Aki, but he is absolutely the form footballer in Ireland. Gary Ringrose in there with him is great. He's probably the fourth form.
It's probably 13. Our most creative centre partnership that we can put together at the international level.
No question. Andrew Conway on the right wing is lethal, and Stockdale, whether he's at fullback or left wing, as I think he should be on left wing, he's still absolutely lethal as well. So there's plenty of try scoring out there in that back line. The question mark that lingers from an Ireland point of view is can they get it out there quick enough?
Or are they just going to kick it in the sky and chase it?
Well, let's hope not against Italy.
We hope not. But the other kind of concerns I have are with the bench. Some of the, like, it's been a problem for us for a wee while. I don't think we use our bench well, and we saw in the World Cup with Rassie Erasmus opting for the 6-2 split because Yankees wasn't quite working, just maximising the impact of those replacements. And we've seen Eddie Jones call them finishers before, like they're important jerseys to contribute. And like the decisions this week, we have Robbie Henshaw to come in, presumably for one of the centres.
Well, they released Shane Daly and Dave Carney back to club footy, so that was I didn't like that.
No,
I would have preferred to see Daly or even Dave Carney on the bench there
for sure. Ross Byrne covering 10. Obviously, that's kind of necessary. I don't think Johnny's going to play the full 80 against Italy.
Wouldn't have minded Jack Carty in there.
Wouldn't have minded Jack Carty as well. Same as the
just a running call. 10.
Gibson Park is the most impact I see from the bench, to be honest. I think he has a capacity to change the game, and if we're needing a fourth try or something in the last quarter, he could contribute. But Peter O'Mahony on the bench, what's he going to do coming? Like, he is a guy who starts a game, like at his best, he's a workhorse who's there from minute 1 to minute 80 or something. Like, I don't see him as being a barnstorming off the bench guy.
It is the Italy game, and they're just trying to bet in and get these guys some minutes for the most part. But I think Olsen Delan is a good one to see. He's a guy who's going to make impact. Likewise, Heffernan at hooker. Great to see him get his opportunity. And actually Ed Byrne at loosehead as well has brought nothing but impact for Leinster all season. So I actually think in the tight there is room to make massive impact. But even just moving on from the squad, I think that Ireland in big picture talk have some work-ons. Like, I think the Six Nations performances this year were very, very reminiscent of what we were seeing in 2019, and like the only reason we're in the competition, I think, is because the standard dipped a little below what was happening in 2019 in terms of Wales were just nowhere near at the pitch, and they were giving Ireland soft tries once they did get up to the line, which is just something World Cup Wales would never do, or Grand Slam Wales from last year. And they probably would have beaten Ireland in the way they played. So I just think, it's been slow and sort of sluggish for a couple of years now, the kicking has been predictable. Everything has been stuttery. What creativity they tried to bring is off first phase.
Yeah, we haven't used the full pitch in multi-phase. But it was something I think Squidge Rugby pointed out in Joe Schmidtball and how it works. But it's like as soon as we get to the 15, we won't go blind. We will just come back the other way. We don't use full width when we attack.
That was one variation they had worked in the Six Nations, is that they did play a little wider.
They did,
but it was all very slow again, and it was all very ponderous, and it was still, when we were winning games, it was still that very old formula of getting on top of teams physically, and then it was found out against England as
you run into a bigger team one of these days. Where, like, unless you're the Springboks, you're going to run into a bigger team.
So in terms of improvements, what we need to see from Ireland is tempo on the ball. We need to see, I think, cutting, like if you were looking at it from a stats point of view, cutting the ruck speed, the time it takes to have a ruck, in half.
Yes,
that would be a massive that would be a target. That should be a target for Ireland. Because the ruck speed is too slow. Everything is too slow.
As you say, it would make the exact same somewhat limited plays just twice as dangerous for being twice as fast. Like everything should be done with much more tempo.
Ireland need to get used to playing at that speed as well. They can't get to the stage where they're so used to playing slow rugby that quick rugby shocks them.
Yes.
And then they can't cope. They haven't got the hands, or they haven't got themselves in shape in time to operate at that quick speed, because things only get tougher. It's the first year of the World Cup cycle. Things only get tougher from here. So they need to work on rounding their offense as well, but mostly just bringing that tempo off the base to be massive. But I'd love to see them move it wide. I'd love to see them attack space. I'd love to see Gary Ringrose feature as a second distributor. All of those things, creativity on multi-phase, strike moves, having a different reset play than a box kick.
All of that would be a huge benefit and necessary as well. You need to vary all of that, vary exit plays, vary attacking sets. All of those things should be variation, but as well, just hunt those tries. Don't make any bones about it. Hunt those tries. You're going to try and hammer Italy this week, and tee yourself up nicely to go and take on a big challenge in France and try and get a title, try and get some silverware. That's got to be the goal.
Absolutely. Moving on to Italy, from their point of view, obviously we talked at the top of the segment just about how abject they looked in that Six Nations first time under Franco Smith. He has sort of responded to it in terms of he called up 11 players aged 23 or younger for their training camp in September. They are going to be without Matteo Minozzi this week because he's playing in the Premiership Final. Odd times and all of that. It's not one I necessarily object to as much as I sometimes do. I do think Test rugby prioritised over club rugby is a good thing, but when he's in a final and this is a game, this is a dead rubber game, I understand.
For sure.
But Hooker Luca Bigi's their captain, and in terms of players to look out for, there's quite a few back rowers. Obviously Bram Stain, there's a world class player in Bram Stain, and he hasn't been far from finding it.
Yes, he's close. He certainly looks every inch that world class player when he plays in Benetton colours. He's their best man.
He's a brilliant line out jackler, super physical, can get on top of players, can get on top of attacks and defences. Very physical both sides of the ball. Seems to have a very good engine to him. Rarely gets taken off. Spends a whole 80 minutes making plays. Real big fan of Bram Stain, and likewise in the back row. They have Negri and Pelledri and even Mbanda in there.
All good back rowers. Legitimate though. Those are top internationals really that they have.
100%.
They're found wanting in some other areas, but in the back row they are really sharp. And then there's a question mark over the 10 shirt as well, because we have 3 contenders. Haven't seen Tommy Allen this season.
He's in the squad.
But we haven't seen him on the field at all since lockdown. We have seen Carlo Canna at Zebra, and he's been in there
looking his usual self,
kicking away a little bit too much ball sometimes.
He was playing at 12 for Italy.
He was in the Six Nations. So and he was doing surprisingly well with the physicality of that role, considering how
You're the only one who's surprised. I've always been a big believer in Carlo.
Yeah, I know. But the other option is Garbisi, who's he's been wearing the 10 shirt for Benetton and looking good in it. For sure, he's a guy that they'll be excited to get in there as well. It means no more McGinn. What is his name? The former Irish player who had been in there.
McKinley.
McKinley had been the third choice guy in there. Garbisi, good to see him in because
McKinley got his chance and never took it.
Yeah, it's true. Whereas Garbisi now could be due for his chance. We may see him.
I think it's certainly a dilemma. I didn't mind seeing the dual distributor thing in there from Italy. So certainly it's something to watch. But in terms of, like, if you're looking at where Italy need to improve from a macro picture point of view, it is still, as it is often with tier 2 sides, and I do refer to them as a tier 2 side, It's defending. It's coping with offenses that are bringing, both that combination of speed, physicality, and shape. That so few tier 2 sides can deal with. And at the moment, the Italian defence often flounders. Their shape, they lose their shape very quickly. They also miss tackles.
That's their main one. They do lose shape, but a lot of the time they don't even have chance. They're in their shape and they just miss the tackle. So the shape is pointless then. If you're just going to miss the front of tackle, it doesn't matter what shape you put on it. You need to make tackles. And for them, their back row get through a lot of work, tend to make most tackles in any game they play in. It tends to be the Italian back rowers who are top of the tackle stats because they're kind of bailing their back line out of some of these games.
They're working ridiculously hard all around the pitch. But absolutely, they need guys in the centre to get out of the line. It's all well and good having a Campagnaro in there who can dance and score the odd try, but you need to have guys in the 13 shirt, especially if you want to go with dual distributors, who can get out and make tackles and make physical hits. And so they're just lacking a little bit of that physicality. I mean, so far this year, I think we were saying they've registered 3 defeats, 2 goose eggs, and an aggregate score of 94-22.
That's no good.
That is brutal. Just tightening up the points conceded would be a massive
it's got to be a work on, because obviously they're out of the Six Nations, but this Autumn Nations Cup series will be a big one for them.
They've got games against Scotland and Fiji and France. Probably a change strip France, as we'll talk about.
All of those are things that they should be targeting. So little improvements that they have to make on that macro scale, and it will come. Like certainly in the Conor O'Shea era, which is now past, we saw them go from a team that literally could not pass the ball from 9 to one side of the pitch without dropping it. Now they can do that, and they have the dual distributor thing. That's good, but it has also revealed just this, like you're saying, first up tackles being missed all over the park. Need to cut those things out, and it's still little increments that they're going to have to work on. And this autumn window is this is kind of a warm up game for them, even though it's a Six Nations game away from home in Ireland. But they got to treat it as such and kind of target. Little targets.
I would say the young players in the squad is definitely great. It's great to see. And then the other thing that I wouldn't mind them working in, if they're working in 2 distributors, it's something I'm always going to talk about with tier 2 sides from Fiji to Georgia. Is a smarter kicking game. I mean, I'm very tired of seeing tier 2 sides try and copy the top sides. I mean, you have to be innovative if you're at that level. And it's there's scope for creative coaching when you're in Italy's position.
Well, we saw it with Conor O'Shea's little Rookgate thing a few years
ago.
A
few years ago in one game, and then never again. In terms of that whole O'Shea era, I mean, that was the highlight of it. And again, they lost by 20, but then you never really saw that again. And just something that you get sick of seeing is the box kicks and everything, especially if you've guys who can kick balls in the 10 shirt and the 12 shirt. Manipulate the space a little bit and pin your opponents back and then defend, but pin them back smartly. Do not just bomb the ball in the sky, because teams are ready for that.
And the other thing I would always say as well, with when a side is as much an underdog as Italy coming to Dublin are, don't kick 3-pointers in the first half, especially because think about it, you're going to be outmatched for fitness. You're going to suffer when the subs come in. The last quarter is not going to be yours. The first quarter might be, though. You might catch a team that are sluggish and a little slow, and if you start with intent, you can kick the corners and grab the tries and try and get yourself in the lead, so that you can then try and cling on to it when you're fading in the second half, as you will. Whereas getting into a game and actually getting yourself up the pitch and earning a penalty and then choosing to kick 3 when you're vastly the inferior side is just never the right call. It is the right call when you're in like Australia kicking 3 against the All Blacks to try and get their scoreboard ticking over. That makes sense. They're in a competitive contest most of the time. This is a game they're losing 9 times out of 10, probably more. You gotta try and just score as many tries as you can. You have young kids, as you said, in the squad. Go there and try and attack Ireland. We know Ireland can be slow. We were just accusing them of being too slow. They can be sluggish. They can be defensive. Ireland can be guilty of kicking the 3-pointers when they need the 4 tries from the game. So it'd be nice to see Italy buck that trend and kick everything to the corner and try and go at Ireland and do the same next week.
Exactly, and just increase the amount of minutes that Ireland are in the wrong end of the field. And increase their anxiety.
And then they'll get frustrated about it. That's their best chance for success. It's true no matter what the team is. It's not just Italy, although it comes up every year with Italy being in the Six Nations such as they are. But it is just a true thing that it never works out for the tier 2 side who kicks 3 in the first quarter. It just doesn't. They end up losing 90-6.
In terms of predictions, how do you see it going?
Not 90-6, although I would like to see it. No, I'm going to say Ireland win in similar fashion to how they got the Samoan job done in the World Cup, maybe a little stuttery, but a 35 to 7.
It's hard to say. I mean, Ireland are bigger and stronger. They have picked. There are some lethal players in that Ireland team. I think there's capacity, especially with England's recent record in defence, for Ireland to put on something of a show. Because even when it's slow, you can picture Bundyaki getting over the line. You can picture Ringrose and Conway only needing that little bit of space to get in and score and tries.
CJ just scattering an Italian defender and going over
so
simply.
I don't see a problem for Ireland in this game, naturally enough, unless Italy come out and surprise us with a game to make a game of it.
There's two things: Italy coming out and surprising us, or us just being too slow about everything.
Well, I think we probably will be, but I think we'll have
get
too
away
much
with
for
it.
Italy. Yeah, we'll get away with it. You probably might see a first phase move work or something along those lines. But I can't imagine Italy are going to give us too much of a game. So I would go Ireland. 5 tries, 25 points, job done.
Yeah, that's my hope for the game is obviously that they get that 4 tries. But one little selfish thought of mine as well that I would love to see from Ireland is a kick return score. I would love to see us turn a loose kick into a try.
Jacob Stockdale, Andrew Conway, Hugo Keenan is not a bad.
They're a great back three to try it. I can't remember the last time Ireland scored a kick return try off the same phase. It's done all the world over. You can see it done by any kind of team. We just don't tend to score them. I would not like to see 5 tries that are all maul tries. I'd love to see a kick return try. So that's
expanding the game going forward is obviously massive. But job one is to try and stay in the Six Nations, and if they do that, we can't be too picky. Exactly. Obviously, we struggle to maintain our neutrality when Ireland come in, which is why it's almost easier for us when they don't at times.
To review other teams.
So, speaking of,
we'll
move on.
Yeah. The next game that we have is Scotland, Georgia, and Dara's repping the Georgians. He loves an old Georgia.
I love an old Scot game as well, but I do love the Georgians.
Scotland, to their credit and probably detriment in the World Cup year, did go out to Georgia and give them some games in the warm up. And
they played twice, home and away against Georgia, which is great, and then they're playing another game against them, which I just think
it's great. Georgia need more games against top tier oppositions. That's exactly what they need. Yeah. And especially now considering their tournament has been called off, the nation thing, Rugby Europe. So Georgia are really living for this.
They're blessed to be in it, which is fantastic. Although it's the fact that after they entered them into the competition, they flipped the pools around to give them they moved them to Fiji's group to give them games against Ireland, Wales, and England.
Yes,
it was a bit cruel.
It was a bit cruel. It remains cruelty to Georgia remains a thing that happens throughout the rugby world, and this is no different. Apart from Scotland, who seem to be giving them as many ins as they possibly can. So this is going to be taking place at Murrayfield on Friday at 7:30 kickoff our time. And it's going to be ref by Alexandra Ruiz.
Yes, who we're not huge
fan. Actually, it was the same critique I have of other refs earlier. He is a mute ref, and it really wrecks my head. He doesn't say hands off, doesn't say no, just waits for something and then blows his whistle.
There's too much that's open to interpretation in the rugby rules, where you're almost missing a bit of common sense reffing and a bit of sympathetic reffing, where you get some guys who are very good at it, but absolutely, like when there's a situation where a guy has his hands on the ball and he thinks he's okay, just the courteous thing to do, which you'll see plenty of refs do, is say no, you're not good there, man, you can't touch that ball. 90% of the time they go, okay, sorry,
you're part of the tackle release,
play on.
All of that stuff,
you're part of the tackle, all of that communication is so vital. And then you have some refs like Mr. Ruiz who just look at it and then blow their whistle.
Yeah.
And then that's
it kills the game.
It's so tough to play then.
Yeah. It leaves doubt. Like there's nothing worse than when no verbals from the ref at all, and then a massive breakdown or a maul, whistle goes, and both sets of players eagerly look up at the ref, not really with a clue as to what's happening.
Refs need to give players a chance not to give away the penalty. Yes. Obviously, like foul play aside, that's something you just react to when you see it. But generally speaking, like roll away, get out of there. You're not good there. Stay on your feet. All that.
The classic nudge. No.
Yeah, exactly.
All of that stuff is vital.
Give them a chance. It allows to stop the game.
Yeah, it allows the game to flow rather than let it turn into a penalty fest. But with all that said about poor Mr. Ruiz. He's not the only guilty party, but that is just something I would cite as a potential kind of dampener on this this otherwise great game.
We're going to look at it now from the perspective of both teams. So we'll do a Scottish preview first, and then we'll look at it from the point of view of the Georgians, and hopefully we'll have that time stamped in for you, so you can skip if you're interested in the Georgian preview or the Scottish preview. We'll let you have that. But we're going to start with Scotland. Who named their squad as well this afternoon.
They did.
It's they're in a decent place squad wise. You know, they have proper, like, I'm looking at this team and they have proper depth and heft in the tight five. For the first time I think in a long time.
It's true.
Rory Sutherland at Loosehead was one of the finds of the Six Nations. He was magnificent. He's a brilliant.
Made Ireland look like mugs at scrum
time. He out-scrummed Tyg Furlong and then out-scrummed Kyle Sinclair. Back-to-back games. I mean, Scotland, in terms of their macro picture and where they are, you know, they started off. It was ugly when it started off. You know, they had Finn Russell leave the squad after a fight with Gregor Townsend. This is all after losing in the pool. And then you'd Finn Russell leaving the squad. You'd Stuart Hogg made captain, and then Stuart Hogg comes up with two, like in games against Ireland and England where they're competing, they're right on the edge of the game, and then he turfs the ball over the line in Ireland against Ireland to tie the game. In I think towards the end of it as well. An appalling mistake from your captain and potentially now European Player of the Year, Stuart Hogg.
Yes, that is bizarre nomination, but
that was a bad mistake from him. Obviously, then no Finn Russell. They lose that game by 7 points. They go into the next game, which is a completely soaking game in the lashings of rain in Murrayfield. Super tight. Nobody's getting any tries. And then the breaking of the back of the game is England put one of their trademark attacking kicks in, and Hogg fails to deal with it. Drops it over his own line. Down there gives a try away then and there, but they rule that he's carried it back over and he's just grounded it, and then it's an England scrum 5 from which they score the try that breaks the back of the game. So really, but for those two errors, they're right in there with Ireland and England.
It's true.
And I think in terms of the physicality in the tight areas, they've never competed better.
That's where they've improved. To be honest, a lot of credit has to go to Richard Cockrell and Edinburgh for upping their game in that area and bullying Glasgow a lot into getting their act together in physicality a little bit as well. Like, it'd been a long-standing thing, like under Gregor and before him as well, Vern Cotter, Scotland had tried to be the identity as the quick team in the Six Nations. Obviously a very ambitious thing to do, and when you have a player like Finn Russell, you can afford to do it. But it was kind of at the expense of some of the tight forward play. Some of them were a little bit loose. Certainly in the scrum, they weren't a force to be reckoned with, and they were bullied often. Whereas now the balance looks a bit better, and they have brought in guys like Keble and Sutherland, Nell and Fagerson.
Keble and Sutherland in behind. Nell is missing this week, but they've got Fagerson, and in behind him, I just remind myself of the name, but he's a class player, Simon Bergen. Very solid scrummer. Simon Bergen is. So they got Ollie Keble and him to come on, and McAnally as well. Fraser Brown is now captain of the side, so they have two test level, very quality, able to compete with the best front rows in there. At second row, they've an embarrassment of
options at second row. You have Toulis, you have Greys, both kinds.
Two Greys. You've got Toulis, you've got Gilchrist. In terms of who's starting this week, I believe it is
Toulis is in there. I know.
Yes, Toulis and Scott Cummings, who's another guy who's in there. They're also missing Sam Skinner, who's playing the Premiership Final. Exeter man. So they have
tight five options. It's a hefty Scotland, and that used to be their identity. They used to be, before any of this throw the ball around, before Finn Russell was even on the scene and they were a Dan Parks team, they used to be kind of scrappy, 10-man rugby, very physical, very combative. Murrayfield was a horrible place to go. It was often a very ugly game, but they were bitty and made it difficult in the tight, and they've kind of blended those two identities well. You've only the two clubs in Scotland, which is a bit of a disadvantage for them as far as player pool, but they've kind of discovered and kind of held their identities, and they're contrasting and kind of complementary. You have the hard-nosed Cockrell's Edinburgh, who are there like providing that grit and making sure that they're not a soft Scotland, which they have been guilty of being. And then you have Glasgow on the 4G pitch, which is necessary, because otherwise it'd be a washout every other day up in Kingston. But it means that you can play some running rugby and get some backs play going. So they're making the most of those resources, and it's actually paying some good fruit. It's good to see quite a strong Scotland squad here.
And the back row as well, huge quality in there. Jamie Ritchie was one of the players of the Six Nations going into this break. Excellent number 6. He was their standout, and he's vice captain now as reward. Hamish Watson, obviously all class on his day, has been struggling for form a little bit, but he's got other guys coming in behind him. Nick Haining, Obviously Cornell Dupria, who's on the bench this week, Matt Fagerson, Blade Thompson, and even Magnus Bradbury, who's injured at the moment, is going to come back into that squad. They've gone with Richie, Hamish Watson and Fagerson, and they've actually gone with a 6-2 split on the bench, such as the Georgian challenge, and it is a great challenge for this pack, and it's also a great challenge for the Georgian pack, as we'll talk about, because there's quality there, because they got Rob Harley and Nick Hayling and Cornell Dupria to come on, as well as a full front row. So they've got 6 forwards on the bench, and I suspect this is going to be a game about the packs.
It probably will, but then that being said, like, Scotland will still keep their identity as the team that does like to move, and they will recognise that they're up against Georgia, who are a big physical team, and they have guys like Duhan van der Merwe making his debut on the wing. You obviously have Darcy Graham, who's electric on the other wing as well. So they will be trying to move the ball and put those guys into space and just run those Georgians round a bit. And then once you run those Georgians round a bit, then they're a little softer in those contacts, and then you can get some scrum attacks.
They played Finn Russell in those games, but he really did do a number on the Georgian defence, and that's certainly going to be an area that Scotland will look at. But I also think they'll be looking to test their forward pack.
They will, because we complimented all of those guys. We listed those scrummaging props that they now have. There's kind of no better test than the Georgians, who are a team all about the scrum. So it'll be a good little litmus test for Scotland as they get ready for their final Six Nations game next week, but also for this tournament coming up as well. Just kind of kick the rust off, same as anyone else, and give themselves a proper test against a really good and probably game Georgian squad.
Yeah, the back line for Scotland: Ali Price at scrum half, Adam Hastings. Those are the incumbents. Obviously, Finn Russell's just on the bench for now. They've brought in James Lang from Quins at inside centre to partner Chris Harris.
That'll be interesting. New dynamic. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, they've been struggling really to settle on those centres. I feel like on their best team, if he's fit, Sam Johnson's still the guy for that shirt, but it's definitely a chance for Lang to put a stamp on it.
Yeah.
And then a lethal back three, certainly lethal wingers, Duhan van der Merwe and Darcy Graham, with Blair Kinghorn filling in for the missing hog, obviously
contesting the Premiership Final as well. But definitely potential to move that ball around with those guys. Chris Harris has been in great form for them as well since grabbing that 13 jersey. No room for Hugh Jones, interestingly enough. They still haven't quite figured out what to do with him.
He's playing at 15 for Glasgow. I thought he might come in because Kinghorn's form has been so sporadic, but
and plus I thought they might want to run them around, and Hugh Jones is definitely a quicker option than Kinghorn from 15, but
it remains to be seen how it'll go for them. But in terms of the big picture after that rough start, after that tough time with Finn Russell, it was reminding me, I mean, we had been sort of saying for a long time that Scotland were like Eddie O'Sullivan's Ireland, and that they were building that way. Back in that era where they had finally discovered the capacity to attack, and they moved the ball around, and they looked very exciting for a little while, and then all of a sudden they're threatening the best sides in the world, and they're beating England, and they're damn near beating the All Blacks, and they're beating South Africa, and it's extremely exciting. And then it sort of tapers off, and then a disastrous World Cup ensues where they don't get out of their pool. Their coach, with still a little bit of good credit in the bank, gets to stay on. And then a disaster ensues in the following Six Nations, and he gets fired. And it looked to be so on course for that, but actually they managed to scramble it together towards the latter end. They got a good win against Italy where they didn't concede a point. They looked physical. They were unlucky, frankly, not to get anything out of those Ireland and England games. And then they beat France in Murrayfield. I mean, red cards notwithstanding, I think even before the red card they looked the better team, and they caused France problems up front.
Yeah, for sure. So there's lots of positives for this Scotland side, despite the last 12 months not really going their way, but definitely a lot of positives and a lot of new things to be excited about. And then just in terms of this game, it'll be nice to see them take to Murrayfield again and hopefully kind of hit the ground running and string some passes together.
It's a lovely betting in, because the Georgians obviously are going to be highly motivated to go out and deliver as good a performance as they can, given their situation. It's a great test at scrum time for Rory Sutherland and for Xander Fagerson. That's going to be massive, and then it's going to be a nice test for the sharpness of their attack. Can they face a pack that's brutal and get it outside them and move them around, and ultimately get the tries towards the latter end of the game that put it to bed? Can they deal with the tier 2 Georgian side the way that a proper big tier 1 side would expect to at home?
That's the question for them, and as well as giving minutes to key men, that'll be their main goal for sure.
And they also need to keep Georgia. Like, we'll talk about Georgia's picture now in a moment, but in terms of Georgia's picture, they're looking to sort of lay siege to your line and spend 20 minutes up in your 22.
Not dissimilar to what Exeter
do.
They
need to kick sharply and not make silly errors and not give Ruiz a chance to pin them and allow Georgia to make that picture. So they also just need, if they're rusty, there is capacity for this to be a frustrating afternoon or evening for them. So they have to play smart, they have to play in the right areas of the field, and they have to make Georgia do the bulk of the work in terms of exiting.
Make Georgia exit is one thing. Don't give them exits, be that through penalties at midfield scrums or just general penalties in the middle of the field. They need to minimise Georgia's ins into their 22 and put them on the back foot, and then surely the game should be theirs if they manage to do that. But then we'll pivot on to Georgia as well, because Georgia, obviously, we haven't seen them since the beginning of March. Yes, they have been in quarantine, same as most others. So it'll be a great thing to see. They did have a rough time of it in 2019.
They did.
They the World Cup pool didn't play out for them. They got absolutely Fiji'd, but they did manage to paint their picture against little Uruguay and absolutely deflate the Los Teros after their big bandwagon.
They were a worthy part of that big pool, and they're always a worthy part of Tier 2 rugby. They paint a very, very interesting picture. Their people are extremely passionate about the game, which I love.
It's the national game. There's only it's actually a national sport.
I'm always wishing great success and good things on Georgia, and we will talk about sort of where they need to work on and how they need to build that success and how likely it is that they could pull off an upset here against Scotland. But first of all, we have actually got their team. So I may as well rattle through that. It's an interesting one. They've got Nariashvili, the incumbent loosehead, in there. They've got excuse the pronunciations, I'll do my best by the way. Bregvadze at hooker, Kaulashvili at tight head, Sheishvili and Kurdikashvili in at lock. I don't know much about those locks, and I think that lock is an area, and we'll get into it, but like their back row and their front row can be so effective. I think lock is an area that they could really improve, so definitely looking for something out of those guys, something special, because that's to complete the pack. I think they do need dynamic locks, and locks were excellent at line out time. Those true enforcers have they've at times looked a little passengery in this Georgian team.
Sometimes that's true, for sure,
although their pack, generally speaking, can compete with the best of them.
They're still hefty.
The back row is very exciting. Girogadze at 6, Saganadze at 7, and Becca Gorgadze at 8, and even on the bench, Kiliashvili, he was brilliant last season as well. So those guys
have an embarrassment of riches in the forwards. Really, sometimes they are so physical. It's a very
hefty, very dynamic pack, which is quite exciting. They've stuck with Lobzanidze at 9, Absentadze on the bench. Absentadze at 10 in with them, and Aprasidze on the bench covering 9 as well. They've gone with that sort of a stalwart at 12, Sharakadze, with Tapladze, who I don't know too much about. I haven't really seen him in a Georgian. I'm not sure if he's on debut, but I haven't seen him in a Georgian.
It would be nice to see him go well, because they definitely need a bit more razzle dazzle in the backs. But speaking of razzle dazzle, it's good to see Soso at 15.
Absolutely, and Todua I thought had a good World Cup from 11 as well. He's a nice runner on the ball as well. That's the side that they've gone with. Obviously, they have some players to come in on the bench as well. In terms of what we're hoping to expect to see from them, I'm excited first and foremost by Absentadze. I mean, a couple of weeks into the Pro 2, he was actually, I think it's Perpignan he's playing for. He was the best goal kicking percentage of anyone in that division. I'm not sure if he still holds that record. Aprasidze, obviously, the young man, can drive a nice tempo. Lobzanidze at 9 can definitely kick the ball well. But in terms of Absentadze, a young man who actually, piece of trivia, used to play for our club, Terranure College. He played briefly in the club team.
Yes, you were saying,
which was gas before he got
whisked away
to play in the World Cup. And now, so he has a Dublin connection, which is cool. But it's I'm delighted to see him going so well. I'm delighted to see him playing good standard professional rugby in the Pro 2, which is always great to see lots of these tier 2 guys playing pro rugby. And I think he's a massive sort of do or die for the Georgians in terms of, can they expand their game a little bit with a good quality 10 who can both kick and pass and move the ball. As you say, the Georgians had a rough time of it in 2019. They, in the World Cup, they did paint their picture against Uruguay, you're right in saying, but frankly, like against first Fiji, blew them away.
They did.
Blew them away.
Absolutely unlocked them.
But even in the games against like Wales and Australia, they weren't
at the same.
They were never close.
Nowhere near the pitch. Yeah, no, it's and there were a few reasons for that. It's like part of it is just the standard they're playing at. Like one of the things we were saying in terms of what Scotland need to do is force them to exit. But their exit play in Rugby Europe had been usually to kind of flick it wide to one of their flankers on the wing, who would just break a tackle and march them up, whereas they weren't able to get away with that. Very often their passing wasn't slick enough to get them from one side of the field to the other before they were swallowed up against those tier 1 defences. So like it'd be nice to see them put a little bit more subtlety on the ball. Obviously Soso at 15 is a lovely kind of player, kind of counterintuitive as to what you'd expect from a Georgian player. He's more of a footballer than a physical guy, but they need to see a little bit more of that, a bit more deception, a bit more variation, probably a bit more crispness to their hands. So this new 13 will be exciting to see him go well. But then also, like you'd cited here, how are they going to cope with these defences?
There's 3 key areas that I'm looking at. Like if Georgia want to make the step up from perpetual Rugby Europe winners to, obviously they've been advocating Six Nations rugby for as long as there's been time, and it looks like they're going to get a game against Italy, even if they do lose this Autumn Nations Cup. If they finish bottom of that group, they'll have a game against the bottom of the other group, which I suspect will be Italy, certainly on form. That's what you'd expect. So it looks like they're going to get that game that they so crave, where last time out they lost. But in terms of actually making the step up to that level where they compete with the Six Nations teams, there's 3 areas that I really think they need to improve, and the first you just touched on there, which is the defence. We talked about it with Italy. I need to talk about it with Georgia, because for me, Georgia's issues on D are almost more egregious than Italy's, because Italy, you look at them and they look a little slight outside of their back row, but Georgia don't. I mean, Georgia are well able to dominate the collision zone on the ball
against tier 1 sides.
They gave Wales a real scare in an autumn series in the last World Cup cycle. They gave them a proper scare, and they did it by just holding the ball, and Wales and all their back row turnovers were never able to get near the thing. They were so frustrated. So Georgia are absolutely physically able to cope with the biggest sides and use their bodies well.
Themselves with the ball. They impose themselves very nicely with the ball. They know what they're doing with the ball, especially in the 22.
But consistently now they have failed to do so at the top level on defence. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, they're getting shocked by the speed, the speed increase, like in terms of...
Well, we've seen Argentina do them a few times in years gone by, where they just run them ragged.
Argentina's a brutal matchup for Georgia. They're too good.
Yes, indeed.
But in terms of even just competing with this Scotland team, getting out of the line and defending with a bit of dynamism and good technique is a massive work on. And I don't think it can be overstated. Their head coach has come in, and Maisashvili, I believe, was their defence coach.
Yes. And
they were in sort of an awkward limbo time for long enough anyway, heading into this cycle, because Milton Haig left and they didn't replace him for a long time. It didn't look like there was anybody to take the job, or perhaps there wasn't any money to find someone to take the job.
Well, like all unions are suffering, even tier 1 unions are suffering during this COVID thing, and obviously Georgia a bit shy of resources.
Their league hasn't been played as well. It's another factor. Like guys like Soso Matishvili haven't played. The Pro 2 guys have, obviously, but he hasn't. Anybody who's been playing in the Russian league or in the Georgian domestic league, it's all been cancelled since COVID. So there's those issues as well. But generally speaking, just if they had been working on one thing, I would love to see them working on line speed and technical tackling, because they definitely have the heft to use their bodies better than they're using them at the moment, and to really punish teams for going softly into a contact.
Or being casual with their passing game. Like, it would be nice to see them impose themselves without the ball, because they are big enough to do it. It's definitely a good work on for them, and it would be lovely to see them, and it's a necessary step if they're going to take their game to the next level, for sure.
The second key area that I would look at in terms of improvement, I mean, Georgia have very much an Exeter-esque model.
They do.
So it has
to get
be
themselves to the 22, and then once they're in the 22, pick and go.
Be ruthless. And Exeter must be a sign of encouragement for them in terms of their clinicality and the way they go about finishing teams in the 22. It is very Georgian-esque. It's similar to what Georgia do at the lower level in Rugby Europe.
Yes.
But it's doubtless a source of inspiration for them. So the trick, as it is with Exeter, so it is with Georgia, the trick has to be to increase the number of ways that they create that picture. So how do you get down into the Exeter 22? Well, there's a few ways. We talked about defence. Defensive pressure is massive. Force teams to make errors, force teams to kick you back the ball. That's massive. But also your own kicking game.
Yeah.
I think this is somewhere where Georgia have really lacked.
Yes.
I mean, we saw at the World Cup.
Just a box kick. It was a Lobs and Idza box kick. They couldn't drop Lobs and Idza because he's the only one who can box kick, and it was their only exit.
His box kicks weren't good.
No.
His box kicks weren't good, and it was again an example of a tier 2 team not
getting
really
away with it at their level. Like, he could have done that all the live long day in Rugby Europe.
They didn't really do it in Rugby Europe, frankly. Like, but then in this level, they can't really bust out from their own half. They don't want to risk that, and so what they resolve to do is a sort of pale imitation of what all the other teams are doing. Only you're not going to be able to do it as well, and they're going to be well able for it.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, they need to have a clever kicking game, and this is where young man Tato Absendadze comes in.
Yeah.
And certainly, I would love to see him take some of the responsibility. Perhaps even so as you say,
Yeah.
but moving the ball away from the point of contact and pinning the ball in behind. You got Duhan van der Merwe there. He's a guy on debut. He's never played Test rugby. Pro, get that ball in
Blair
behind
Kinghorn has been in sketchy form as well. You can test him out as well.
But you're not testing them with an aimless kick into the sky. All you're doing is inviting them into the game.
Yeah.
You've got to angle your kicks and get deep into the 22. And kicking is a huge part of rugby. It's not a part of Lelo, the game they play, but it is a part of rugby. And it's something the Georgians are going to have to get their head around.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the third thing, I touched on it with the locks, but I think that the Georgians, again, with their body shape and with their physicality, they need to have a line-out maul. A much better line-out for starters, and a much better line-out maul, because it's something that they've been missing. And
yes,
I think that
it's true. They're more inclined to do like what Exeter do, tap and go. And Exeter, again, the analogies are rampant, because Exeter had a few line-outs nicked on them in that Champions Cup final last week. It's like, it's a work on for both of them. They're very similar teams. They do need to branch out, get the line out set, get the drive set, and just get into that technical aspect. It's a very simple thing to do. It's something you can drill even in a COVID, in an isolated environment. It'd be lovely to see them hit the ground running with a good aggressive line out maul or something. That would be ideal. Yeah. But those are three pretty key work-ons for this Georgia team based on what we saw last time out at the World Cup. Obviously, they're at a disadvantage. They're away from home. They're against a team that's ranked higher than them. They haven't played any rugby. So all of this, those are caveats attached. What do you expect to see out of this?
Well, what I will say is that in terms of competing with the tier 1 sides, it is different in a November series in sort of a fallow year post World Cup, and with COVID and everything else. Like we've seen in the brief opportunities that Georgia got, like that game against Wales, we have seen moments where they really have been able to impose themselves, and these sort of out of sorts tier 1 sides, not quite at fever pitch, not quite expecting what the Georgians have brought, can be shocked by it. And that is always there for them. This is a November year. This is a November. Scotland haven't played together in 7 months either.
It's true.
They're putting together a team. Their focus is one eye on they're really eyeing up that Autumn Nations Cup because the group has fallen so favourably for them.
Yeah.
So they have almost 2 eyes on that. This is a prep game for them, and it's a friendly game. You could absolutely catch them. And from a Georgian point of view, if you arrive, we talked about the pitch in the context of the All Black game, but if you can arrive, at your very physical pitch and your very best, understanding that it's going to be tough for you in those 3 games in the Nations Cup, but this could be a game that you might be able to take. You might be able to shock the Scots if you can edge that pack battle against a very good pack, but if you can use your physicality to get on top of them, Scotland could stutter and they could look out of sorts, and that's where you're into the game comes. And obviously a result would be a massive one for Georgia.
Kind of shake the foundations of the rugby world a bit.
Yeah, so
I think it's a little.
There's every incentive. It'd be
great to see them hit the ground running and shock the Scots. That being said, predictions. What do you think's going to happen?
It's very tough, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to make it's hard to make an educated prediction of any sort. You know, what does Matiashvili look like? Is Matiashvili going to rock up fat, having just been eating for the whole time that he hasn't been playing, or are they going to be bulling and ready to go like you'd hope? This is a huge opportunity for them. This whole series, they're playing 5 games now against tier 1
how much faith do you have in them? Are they going to turn up in shape and ready to go?
No, they weren't great at the last World Cup. What I will say is actually since Maisaishvili has come in as coach, it did look negative. It looked decidedly negative, in fact. But to see it just news this week that 2 Ulstermen, Neil Doak and David Humphreys, have come in and joined their coaching squad, and I think Neil Doak is permanent attack coach now.
That's
attack
great.
And backs coach.
Yeah,
there's a limit to how much work you can do in a week, no question. But that's sort of another nice little
encouraging recruitment for sure.
Yeah, so
it means that their eyes are on it. They're trying to improve, and they hopefully in some areas they will.
If they're at the right pitch, crucially as well on the other side of the ball defensively.
Yeah.
If you can put in a big performance defensively and not allow Scotland to have easy ins, then absolutely they can make a scrap of it. And if it's a scrap, it could go either way. My fear is that they won't be quite at the pitch defensively, and they won't be quite ready for what Scotland bring in terms of the speed and sharpness of the ball, which is, it's hard to be ready for that. But I hope that they rock up with passion and intensity and strength and give Scotland a right game. In terms of prediction, I can't make one. I just don't know. It's hard to know. Well, you can say, you can be the villain. Go on.
I'll say Scotland by 10-15 in a scrappy game.
Alright, I predict Georgia will win.
Yay! Alright, with that, we will move on then. Okay, next up we have France v Wales. Another friendly game happening this Saturday at 8:10, is that correct?
8:10, that's 9:10 local time in Paris.
What's going on?
That's what they do, man.
Yeah,
they do the late night games over in France.
Yeah, I'm fine with late night, but why is it not at 9? Why 10 past?
I tell you, it's a pre-dinner game for the French as well.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
That's a lunchtime game.
Yes. And it's going to be reffed by Carl Dixon as well. Friendly game, both sides kind of just getting ready for both next week and the Autumn Nations Cup as well. That's kind of what they're at. So yeah, we'll start with France. We're going to look at both sides, what they kind of want to get out of the game for sure, and we'll start with France as they are the hosts.
Yes, and unfortunately, starting with France in terms of previewing the game has a more newsy feel to it than it does a sort of a rugby feel to it, because France's situation has been compromised and affected thoroughly by as a result of a dispute between the LNR and the FFR.
Yeah.
The dispute was ultimately resolved with the agreement between the organisations that no player will be included in more than 3 matchday squads throughout the 6-match campaign.
Yeah.
So that means that nobody can feature on the starting team, on the bench, or as a reserve, or as 24 or 25.
Medical jokers.
Yeah, exactly. Cannot feature it can't go to the matches in any more than 3 of the 6-week window, which includes obviously this game, which is a friendly, the last game of the Six Nations, and the 4 games of the Autumn Nations Cup. Thankfully, mercifully, this is an internal French dispute, and the Tier 2 players and Finn Russell and all the players from other countries playing in the top 14 or in the Pro 2 are governed by have the freedom to play for their nations as a result of the World Rugby rules.
Yes.
And vis-a-vis test windows taking over. So that is mercifully true, but from the point of view of the French, they have this situation with the LNR. The LNR were fuming that this test window existed. They're outraged really by the existence of test rugby, I think.
Yeah, the LNR, in an ideal world, they would have no power and have to ask for their players. To be honest, they really do more harm than good.
Well, they do some good in terms of the French rugby is a massive institution, and the LNR have now 3 professional divisions, which employ a lot of players, not just French, but from Tier 2 nations, 100%. And give vital contracts to those guys. So I don't want to be going out too much and demonising them, but their attitude to test rugby, their constant attempts to undermine test rugby, are counterintuitive and actually hurt the game. But they're only concerned about their own bottom line, which is the French public, and the French public caring about the French national team annoys them, and they'd sooner have them all care about the club rugby institutions and forget them and forget the rest of the world. It should be all about French club institutions. That's nonsense. Sort of the LNR attitude,
it's absolutely nonsense, and it's hard to forgive them because even the more recent news of Nadolo has kind of come out of retirement because now he's not playing in France anymore. He's in Leicester, so now he can play for Fiji. Yeah. The guy didn't go to the World Cup.
Yeah, and we were made to believe that this was a personal decision on his part. Which was deeply, deeply frustrating. It was never true. He was coerced because as we said, the World Rugby do have certain rules governing this. So it's we can't make you stay, but we can make you know that we'll make you miserable if you choose to go. So we'll strong arm you into staying. And that's essentially what they did. And it's those kinds of tactics that really do annoy me. And then other things like this story annoy me too, because it now means that France will probably be using north of 60 players in this little window. Something like that. I mean, it's at least 50. At least 50, because they can't have more. They're going to have 25 going to any game, because you need, what if one of your props goes down injured in the warm-up? You need to have guys who can slot in. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah.
So you're talking about potentially 27 players going to a match day and they can't go more than 3 days. So you're talking about perhaps 60 players, which is incredible over a 6-week period, and it really puts them.
It makes it tough to make a cohesive squad out of it, or build a team in any capacity for any kind of thing. It really seems they can't do that.
It creates this mad dynamic for the French coaching staff where you're like, okay, what do we do? We have this game against Ireland next week, which is potentially we could win the Six Nations. We're gonna maybe England struggle. Touchwood, England struggle, only beat Italy by 25 points. Now we go into this game knowing 27-point win over Ireland does us. It's a big ask, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, you certainly want your A team on the pitch.
And
for it.
What's the question? Do you mix it? Do you put some players in one team but keep some for another weekend, or do you go thoroughly A and B? And A and B is brutal. We pick our first team, our first choice bench, our first choice reserves, and we have them all used for this game. Well, I guess the reserves you would just not do. You would pick complete under 20 guys as reserves and then just hope there isn't an injury.
That's probably what they'll do. Yeah,
that's probably what they'll do. But they'll pick their first 23 for that game. That rules that, and then presumably if you're plotting a game to do that in, it's going to be the Six Nations game, the playoff game after the regular Autumn Nations Cup, and then probably the Scotland game because that's in Murrayfield. Yeah. But then that means you're picking a B team, a thorough B team with none of even your first choice bench. Against Fiji,
and this week against Wales,
So it's a completely fucked dynamic if you're France, isn't it?
It is. It's crazy. You're going to see many different French teams over the next few weeks. This week we probably won't be. Well, I have Entamac up there, but he possibly won't feature.
No.
But you might see the likes of Louis or Jalibert or Carbonell who've looked good.
Jalibert struggled in the Scotland game, so it depends on what they like. Obviously, they'll have some wiggle room for dynamism between the squads because it's only 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off, so you can move a guy from the first team to the second team, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll give Carbonell the shout this week just to see if he steps it up, and then he could take Jalibert's place because Jalibert had that bad day in the Scotland game.
He did.
So yeah, I think there's some young French excitement to look out for, obviously, in this game.
And it's also it's evidence of them being in a position where they can do this. They can use north of 60 players because they do actually have that many professional French players to choose from. So it'll be interesting in that regard. But it'll be tough for them to get any kind of momentum or cohesion as a group, and certainly what we were talking about with all these games, there's a bit of ring rust. Everyone's been in lockdown. Obviously the club game has resumed, but still the international game you'd expect to see a little bit of a bedding in period. France will kind of be chopping and changing all through it.
Yeah, and they'll have no opportunity. You would have, when this fixture was scheduled, you would have assumed that this was a chance to knock the ring rust out for the first team before the big game against Ireland, which they now clearly can't do.
Yeah.
It's going to be a sort of a mess of a French team, but you'll see some guys who possibly won't feature next week. We might see Tommy Ramos get a shout out, and there'll definitely be some exciting prospects
for sure. There. Yeah, it'll be good to see it.
Maybe Duke Show from Racing.
All of these guys have had good shines, although he did play last week, so maybe he might be rested.
Yeah, I know. Do they give a shite about rest?
No, they don't tend to. But it's a bit of a shame that is the conclusion. Obviously, it's good that they got it resolved anyway, because it could have been even more sticky and ugly. But it'll be just curiosity for France over the next wee while, and I'm kind of at a loss to say what to expect from the team they named to play Wales this weekend, because I think
and how that team can look.
Yeah, I just don't know.
You'd almost pick the under-20s.
Yeah, because they'd have more cohesion. But I expect them to kind of name that team, probably throw it around, not really take it too seriously. They'll be given license to try things because they'll be trying to play their way into the A team anyway. They might look a little loose. In fact, they almost certainly will look a little loose. But it may sometimes a beautiful sequence or two may come from the passes actually sticking.
Yeah, the fantastic thing about France, a bit like New Zealand at a lower level, is they do have great attacking instincts.
Yes,
no matter what the situation.
They will flood a short side with a load of runners and grab a nice try, and they do find a way to score against Wales. But themselves and Wales have had some ding dong battles over the last few years.
They have,
and neither side really getting blowing the other one away. They've always been little bitty contests, and this could be another one.
And France got the better of Wales in Cardiff earlier this year, so that's definitely a feather in their cap. But this French team will look a bit more like perhaps a French Barbarians outfit, which could make for a fun game. But from Wales's point of view, they lost to France earlier in the year.
They want to get that W back.
Yeah, absolutely. they have a bit of a boost going into this last period. Obviously, very disappointing Six Nations so far. 3 losses from 4 games. That's rough.
Yeah.
But they have Jonathan Davis back. Fit.
That's great to see.
After Nick Tompkins really did struggle in the 13 shirt in his absence, it's definitely good to see that grey scrum cap back in. Bristol 10 Callum Sheedy has entered the squad.
Yeah, he might be getting a first cap.
Louis Rees-Sammet from Gloucester, very exciting.
Welsh flyer that he is. Who else? They have one of the Wasps who hasn't joined them. That Rowlands, the second row, big hefty oak.
He won't feature this week.
He won't feature this week, but could be a factor next week in their game, and then going forward in the Nations Cup as well. They're missing Thomas Francis in the front row, but they have the likes of Samson Lee, Dylan Lewis, Rhys Carey, Wyn Jones, Ryan Elias, all of these guys pretty experienced in the Welsh shirt and will be hoping to make the step up.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have some quality. Alan Wyn Jones class in the second row as well. And Will Rawlins coming in could be massive for them.
Yeah, Ball has been the incumbent there, but it'd be nice to see Rawlins punish him or push him even.
Well, I think that if you look through the Welsh squad, you have guys to compete everywhere. Like in the back row, you got Falataus and Tippericks and Wainwrights and Navidis and Ross Moriarty. Josh McLeod is now coming into the squad.
Season. It's good to see him in as well. Yeah,
you know, at 9 you always have little Med. The guys are curious 3 selections at 9 in this squad. Davis, Webb, and Hardy.
Yeah,
I'm reading that Webb is the front runner to start, and I think that would be a mistake.
I think it's crazy. I don't
like Murray in Ireland.
Yeah, I haven't seen Rhys Webb play a good game in quite a couple of years, and yet
he's very slow. He's very slow.
Keep talking about him as if he's starting for the Lions or something, and I'm like, what have you been watching? I think he's a nightmare. But no, I would be going with Davies with Kieran Hardy off the bench. To be honest, that would be my
Gareth Davis was brilliant at the World Cup, and I still would have faith in him. In the centres, obviously you've got Watkin and Davis, who I think will be their first choice guys going forward, with Nick Tompkins pushing in behind. And then in the back 3 you've got Lightning, Josh Adams, one of the best wingers in Europe right now. Louis Rees-Sammet, likewise. Liam Williams is going to play for Scarlets this weekend.
That's right. Yes, he's good news.
He's back at 15. I mean, that's a brilliant team in all areas except perhaps the tight 5, and that's where I have a concern for Wales.
Yes, they might find it difficult to compete. Certainly with the French, definitely have a load of options there. Don't know what they'll be picking this week to send out, but whoever they pick, they will have pretty decent scrummaging props and a pretty strong tight 5. So that'll be a big test for Wales. Wales are still trying to in a betting in period, but it's kind of important for Pivac that he starts to get some momentum, because
the pressure starts mounting if you don't.
Exactly, it's a results-driven business, and this is a friendly game away from home, but an away win in France would be a big thing to get it. Regardless,
it'd be a nice thing to get, a nice confidence booster, and then obviously they got the Scotland game next week, which is going to be a right tough game. But then
bit of a dead rubber, but still,
if you're motivated for it,
I think Wales should be too, because as we were just saying, it's a results-driven business, and they need to start getting some. If they're to get any momentum or just faith in their new coaching ticket, because they are in the curious position of having a 10-year plus tenure with one coach, one system, where everything, even while the clubs were in a basket case, everything fed up, and everyone seemed to up their game when they were in a Welsh shirt. You'd see the likes of Lee Halfpenny look pretty average in their club colours, and then when they pull on the Welsh jersey, just grow in stature, and that kind of magic dust seems to have vanished a little with Pivac, and they need to kind of find a new identity. And with the clubs kind of struggling as they have been, it could get out of hand for them quickly. Yeah,
exactly. They do have a lot of talent. They have quick wingers. They have an excellent 10 in Dan Biggar. They have certainly, if they go with Gareth Davis at 9, they have a 9 who can drive a very nice pace. Jonathan Davis, as we know, very classy offensive player as well. Liam Williams to come into the team. There is an identity there that could be about very nice, sharp offense, with almost like a Chiefs side Dave Rennie type of deal, like with Australia, jackal like hell at the breakdown,
feed on turnovers
and move the ball. I would love to see Wales play that way. But obviously defence is a work on after that rough time of it in the Six Nations.
Especially considering how good they were defensively at the World Cup. It's quite a drop-off.
To be honest with you, without being too harsh on the lad, it was Tompkins who came in the absence of Jonathan Davis, and there was a lot of hype around him, and he was playing great rugby for Saracens, but he came in and defended very poorly from 13, and 13 is
such a channel
on what it hinges like. That was rough for them. So hopefully Jonathan Davis coming in can settle that.
And hopefully Tompkins can grow into that role. It could be a useful thing that they poached Tompkins, because he was eligible for England and he could have been
another one.
So Sheedy will be the next one.
Would you go with Sheedy this week?
I would bring him in off the bench. I think I
wouldn't start with him.
Maybe you could maybe start him. Either or. I definitely would cap him this week. I'd give him the run out and let him get in the Welsh jersey and try and throw the ball about. He's been brilliant for Bristol. Like Bristol have been are a different team without him. They have that other out half who gives no control, and Sheedy coming in kind of gives them that surety he can move the ball. Like with Bristol, he plays that attacking, running, tempo-driven rugby. So maybe pick him at 10 and get Wales running, because they do have, like you say, those energetic outside backs to feed and a Jay Davis to get on the ball. Yeah, it'd be nice to see quite a loose. I think the game will be a little loose. Just compared to what you expect from Six Nations, it being a friendly. But it would be nice to see both teams go at it with the right attitude and try and throw the ball around. And if it can become a shootout, then may the better side win. Yeah,
that's the ideal, really, when you get a game that turns into such... It was already a friendly and it turns into a colossal dead rubber. Let's just have it entertain the folks.
Yeah.
So on that merit, I'm going to go for a 40-all draw.
40-all draw.
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a 6-point win for Wales.
Okay.
Away from home. I don't think they've won in France in a wee while. I think France will be affected by this.
They surely won in France last year, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they won the Grand Slam.
Oh, that's right.
Fair. And France are after winning in Cardiff.
So this is true. This is true. Sorry, it's just been a World Cup and a
pandemic.
A while can mean anything. But I'm going to go with a Wales win against a stuttery French team.
Another red card for France?
Could be. But with that, we'll move on, because we have England Barbarians, and this is kind of the storyline that have been coming from it. We have load of Saris in for the Barbarians, which is kind of fun. A good chance for some of them to say goodbye to the game in some regards. I think some of them are retiring as well. But it's always a fun game. The Quilter Cup, as I just learned it is called. I didn't know it was called that.
I vaguely knew that. You see that pop up every year. All these sides get I feel bitter as an Irish fan, because every other side seems to get a trophy for every game they win.
Yeah,
they have a trophy cabinet filled. It's like, this trophy is the time we beat Wales in 2016.
Oh, that's our Fiji trophy. We get a trophy every time we beat Fiji. What? Yeah.
But England, they like to pack their trophy cabinet full of one-off wins.
Yes,
so good luck to them.
Fair enough. Yeah, but it's going to take place on Sunday, I believe.
Sunday, yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to find it here. Sunday, October 25th, 2 p.m. kickoff in Twickenham. Which is local time as well. The rest still to be confirmed, and it's definitely an occasion where you would really like to have fans there. Really, a Barbarians game in Twickenham. It's a shame that
that's what the fans. It's the Barbarians are there to entertain the masses.
It's true, I'm sure you never know. You might see them kicking threes without them.
Well, I think you definitely you might see England do that. You know, where fans would be encouraging England to do other things. They might just be like, let's bully these boys up front, or something along those lines. But you might not get as free flowing a game without the spectators there. But hopefully
you do. You get some Barbarians rugby. It's been a while. We haven't seen them in a wee while. And Vern Cotter, who has just been appointed the Fiji coach post-World Cup, but himself and Glenn Jackson, former referee, who has joined him in Fiji in a coaching capacity, they're going to coach this team as well, which is exciting. Certainly Vern Cotter has a reputation for playing some very pretty but also very good rugby fundamentally. I'm excited to see what he does for Fiji, and in the meantime he has some...
I can tell you he's brought in some Fijians, some local based Fijians, so there's no clashing with club lads as well. A bunch of names I'm not that familiar with, but by all accounts, even the Barbarians Twitter account is hyping them, saying they look great.
Excellent.
So it's always great to see.
Fiji and Barbarians are kind of a match made in heaven.
Yeah, a Barbarians game without Fijians just feels wrong in this day and age.
Yeah, exactly. But Fijian and Saris, a Sari Fijian hybrid kind of team with a Ferg McFadden from our own selfish point of view. Fergus McFadden recently retired, absolute Leinster legend, and played a fair bit of good rugby in the green jersey too. But by all accounts, a great guy and thing. He's retired this year. Great to see him get the nod from Vern Cotter to come and join the Barbarians. That's a little feather in his cap that he definitely deserves.
Yeah, Chris Robshaw likewise. I believe Robshaw's going off to the MLR.
He is. I think he's playing for the San Diego Legion. He signed for them, but he and obviously a Harlequins club legend as well. Over 300 tests games for Harlequins he played, and obviously what a stalwart. So there's definitely some good guys in here. As far as Saris, we have some serious names in there. You have Swinson, you have you or who else is there from Sarries?
Don Morris,
yes,
Manu
that's right.
Vunipola, Richard Wigglesworth,
yes,
Alex Lewington, who I like a lot.
Yes, I do too. Jackson Ray, the back row forward as well. So a decent amount of heft as well, but definitely potential to play some nice attacking rugby here.
Lewington
Swinson being left out of the Scotland squad is a curiosity. After
the amount of locks, man, the amount of locks they got over there.
It's true. They are swimming in them, but he'll definitely feel like he has a point to prove and could play himself into the squad if he has a decent enough showing. But yeah, some stuff to play for from a Barbarians point of view. You definitely want it. It's always fun.
Looking to those young Fijians and looking to Lewington and perhaps for a bit of flair.
Some of those bitter Sarries might be fancying it against England for sure.
Yeah, no question. But it's an exciting game from the Barbarians' point of view, and if their object is to come out and try and put some stuff together and attack and be creative.
Yeah,
and it's always a show when they play. So very much looking forward to seeing
what variation they will do on the goofy tap and go penalty that the Barbarians often bring to Twickenham. The wall or some such thing. Always good fun.
The wall is dust, man. It'll never work again.
No, I know, but it's still nice to see Barbarians try it.
Yes,
because even in its failure, it can be an amusing picture.
It can, for sure.
But then from England's point of view, we have Eddie Jones. He's obviously playing without players, as we've said, for all squads. Players from Wasps and Exeter still unavailable, as that final still to be contested. But a few points of contention here. Ben Spencer, who had moved from Sarries to Bath and is arguably the best scrum half in England.
I was going to say arguably the best scrum half in Europe. Apart from Dupont, he probably is the best scrum half in Europe. Very strange
left out
decision.
of the squad. Seems to be another guy that Eddie Jones just doesn't rate for some reason. So he's left out of the squad in favour of a few others.
Hines and Ben Youngs and a new lad of some kind.
Curious decision
Mitchell,
making in that one. Mitchell, that's right, Northampton lad. Which, as you correctly pointed out, weren't Northampton absolutely dangerous with Comas Reinach, and then they lost Comas Reinach at 9 and have looked abject ever since.
That was my superficial understanding of what had happened in Northampton. Oh, they've Comas Reinach, they're pretty good. Oh, he's gone. Oh, they're terrible.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of true. So it seems a bit bizarre, but Ben Spencer not in England, even though I kind of have him as front runner for the Lions number 9 jersey. That would be my thought. But,
well, we shall see. Obviously, if he can't get into Eddie Jones' good books, he's going to have a hard time of finding his way into a Lions tour. But there is a lot of talent in this squad as well. They've got the likes of Itoji, Billy Vunipola, Farrell, Johnny May, all available for selection this week.
Yes.
And then you've got some exciting prospects who are going to make a name for themselves. In particular, Alex Dombrandt.
He's been earning that call up for the last couple of years, really, hasn't he? He's been sensational.
Great. I love his running game. He's big, he's dynamic, he gets over the gain line, but he has a great pair of hands on him. Good reader of the game. Very, very exciting player, and I'm curious to see what step up he can make in the test shirt.
Yeah, certainly a Barbarian style. Like this is a good game for him. Get Dombrandt out there against the Barbarians. He loves that running. I think it
could be massive. I also think it's important for him. Like, he's a guy who's going to be under more pressure than most because of just the sheer depth that we're talking about in this back row.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with Billy V, the occupant of the jersey you're going for, it's very tough.
Coming in behind you, breathing fire down your neck, like Willis and like Ben Earl and like Nathan Hughes,
and all of these great.
Even Simmons, it's crazy. It's there's the absolute depth of talent there is crazy. But Dombrandt is very exciting, and he's going to be determined, I think, to go out there and give Eddie Jones some food for thought, something to think about apart from the Texans 1-5 record.
Yes, he has cursed the Texans with that hat. Every time he turns up, he's wearing his face mask and Houston Texans hat, and the Texans keep losing.
I'm also really excited about Ollie Thorley. I mean, he's a guy who's been sort of. I think he played in this fixture last year, but he hasn't really had much of an opportunity in the England shirt, and he burst onto the scene with some explosive plays in Gloucester, and it's taken him just a little while to make the step to the next level, but it's a step I'm absolutely certain he can make. Just with his body shape and his frame and his speed. I just think it's only a matter of time before he can make the step up.
He's very, not just brave for the he's keen for the contact. There are some kind of quick speedster wingers who really find it kind of a bit like they can be a bit soft at test level, can be found out. I feel like Ollie Thorley could definitely make that step up. And again, another man I would be chucking out. I'd be chucking a lot of Gloucester men out there to face the Barbas, to be honest, because I think it would be just a fun game for all concerned if you want to throw the ball around like that. Then as far as predictions for the game, again, just the lack of fans is the main concern, the main gripe about what is normally a massive festival of rugby and a great occasion in Twickenham. It'll be a bit disappointing to see the empty seats in Twickenham, but I'm still hopeful that the spirit of Barbarians rugby will ring true, that Vern Cotter will encourage it in them,
these new Fijians will be world class.
Get all those new Fijians on the ball, linking with Sarri's men, get Wigglesworth on the pitch pulling strings.
Hat-trick for Ferg McFadden.
And that's I'm gonna predict a brace for Ferg McFadden and an assist, and the Barbas to win by 10.
I think it's another 40-all draw.
Yeah, well, that could be as good.
No, I don't think so. I think England by
I think you're probably right.
Something similar. 10 points, 15 points.
Yeah,
it's not that important.
Probably right. It's not that the result isn't important.
It's more about we're going to get an insight into what Vern Cotter's Fiji perhaps a little bit will look like. We're going to get to see some new Fijian talent. We're going to get an insight into whether the likes of Don Branton and Thorley can make the step up to test level as well. So it's fun in that regard, and it's just going to be a spectacle. So it's not really about the result. It's just about the participation.
Participation trophies for all around.
Everybody wins. 40-all draw. I'm changing my prediction again. 40-all draw.
And with that we will move on to our last little bit in international rugby, which is the Sudamericano Cuatro Naciones, or the South American Four Nations. I am not a Spanish speaker, as you can tell.
Oh, that was beautiful, man.
It was pretty ugly, I thought. But yes, we have little reviews from last season. Obviously that last week it got underway with Argentina 15 just by the skin of their teeth, scraping past Chile in 15, 25-24 with a big kick at the end of the game to win it.
That was a fantastic game of rugby, man. The Argentine outfit just did not expect it. I think Chile, very, very comparable to what Uruguay were doing in the World Cup last year.
Playing with pace.
Yeah, they brought speed, they brought flair, they brought lovely attacking kicks, which I know you love to see from them.
The first try was a little lovely dab into the corner that was dotted down. Excellent. Yeah.
They also kept their shape on D and rarely gave not never. I mean, this is a tournament which so far has been sort of littered with penalties.
Yes.
But they did their best not to be too egregious in that department, and very often they held a nice defensive shape, made their tackles, and made it difficult for Argentina.
An Argentina 15 that weren't the free-flowing guys we were billing, but were maul tries. We're bringing the heft and physicality to try and bully the Chileans into submission, and it ultimately did just. But they weren't playing with a lot of confidence, and they were certainly shocked and rattled by a very gutsy, very plucky, but very disciplined Chilean performance.
I would say technical as well. Their smart kicking game and their smart passing game and offloading game was excellent. I thought Domingo Saavedra in the 13 shirt, not a guy I would have been familiar with, obviously, but I thought he looked awesome. Really polished, nice and physical. Got a lovely offload away for Larenas, who finished nicely off the bench for his try. And likewise, fullback Rodrigo Fernandez, lovely name, and plays with a lovely tempo as well. Excellent. He was a very good counter-attacking player, and those were the two that were exciting. But Chilean backs playing at speed caused the Argentines all kinds of problems and made a real game of it. What I will say from the Argentines' perspective is that the last try from their captain at 13, Kubia, or Kubisha, I think it might be, it was a brilliant score, and it was lovely phase play. The Chileans were holding that shape and defending nicely, and then they just executed it must have been like a 5-on-4 really quickly, lovely hands, and got outside them and scored nicely. And that was it. They traded a couple of penalties after that, but that was the last try. And perhaps a fitting winning try, as well as a fitting winning kick. It was a very dramatic finish. Chile take the lead with 2 minutes to go. Argentina come back and take the lead and win the game.
It's everything you want from a game of rugby, and something that tournament definitely needed, just to get people excited about. There was no blowout from the Argentinians. Chile put it up to them and very possibly deserved to win. It was definitely a get out of jail free card for Argentina,
for sure.
Then in the other game we had Uruguay 15. 25. Uruguay 15, 25 to 17.
It's awkward saying the 15.
It is saying 15. It's Uruguay 25, Brazil 17. So no losing bonus point for Brazil. It's like Brazil started well. You were saying they
started like a house on fire. Their number 8, big lad Andre Arruda, was absolutely doing bits across the pitch. He was winning contacts. He was barnstorming through their pack looked nice and physical, and they had a couple of line breaks early doors where they just completely went through the Uruguayan defence and got up to the 22, which they instantly converted with their lovely 12 Duque kicking some nice drop goals. He had a weird sort of stabby technique that he used both times, but it was nice. It was they took
nice
a 6
to
point lead.
have this to contrast with the drop goal gate from Bledisloe where neither of them did it.
Well, just down the pitch, chip
Brazilian
the drop goals.
Showing you how it's done.
a little bit. One could argue by the end of the game that perhaps tries were necessary after those line breaks, but as it was, it just got looser and looser from Brazil as the game went on, and Uruguay never panicked and sort of kicked their own way back into the game. Like Brazil, and we've been watching, we will talk about the game, we've been watching as the podcast has gone between Brazil and Argentina 15.
Yes.
But their discipline is just wild. It's all over the place. They were giving away some very loose penalties. They did manage to paint their picture at scrum time on a couple of occasions, marching through, but then on more occasions they were slipping at the scrum. They were getting loose and they were getting pinned themselves. So that became sort of a wash. And then when the dust settled, Uruguay were just the tidier team, the more mature team, never panicked and took their tries and took their penalties and just edged out in front of Brazil. Although Brazil did score a nice try off a 5 metre line out with a clever bit of interplay and bashed their way over for a good one. To keep the game alive. Uruguay obviously had first scored the try from a similar position.
Yes. Uruguay, like we'd build them quite a calm team in the face of adversity, managed to keep their cool and just get the job. They are ultimately probably a bit superior to Brazil, and it showed. And they possibly, if they were a little bit accurate or a little less rusty, could have won by a bit more. But in the end, it was comfortable enough.
They didn't need to. I mean, they were missing a lot of their key men. They had Freitas, who was so good on the right wing last year, playing at 13.
There you go.
Which was interesting. And their lad Favaro in the 14 shirt was kicking all their goals and kicked 20 points.
There you go. Very impressive kicking from the winger. Yeah.
So that was super stuff. And Uruguay ran out deserved winners.
Yes. And we will move on then to Argentina v Brazil, which was happening tonight. It's Wednesday as we are shooting this. And I think we just got a final score on that. It was 40 points to 15 in favour of the Argentinians, I think.
Yeah, we were watching along there as we went. Brazil took a nice early lead with a barnstorming try.
Lovely try.
From the left wing.
But as you said, the discipline was crazy. I was watching it a few times, even as we were prepping this, getting this all ready. I would look down and there Brazil winning a penalty at halfway and kicking to the corner. And I'm like, yes. And then I kind of go do a bit of fumbling around and look back and it's like, oh, Argentina are about to score a maul try. What the hell happened? And a replay, penalty exits. They were just gifting exits to them through penalties.
And Brazil did an interesting thing which nobody else has done, which they rotated near enough their whole pack because this tournament is taking place in such congested time. It's Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So Brazil did a lot of rotation for this game against Argentina, and then it just didn't work on at all. They looked disjointed. Argentina actually looked a lot more settled and took some very nice tries, and it was an all too familiar America's Rugby Championship. This is kind of what you're used to watching with it. Yeah, Argentina essentially absolutely blowing away the tier 2 side in front of them, despite even the poor start. Like it was 7-7 after 6 minutes. This game, which could have been just 7-0 if Brazil had calmed down after taking the lead, but they didn't. It was probably about what they deserved in terms of just this is the difference between these two sides. And then obviously the other game that we have is Uruguay v Chile, which I think could be underway now. It's kicking off in 20 minutes.
It's kicking off in 20 minutes.
So we'll probably still be here chatting when it does kick off, if not just wrapping up the show. But geez, that's optimistic.
But obviously, by the time you see this, that will have finished. Yes. And it is one that we are out of date for. We won't quite know what has happened there.
No, and Chile could absolutely give Uruguay a game, although based on what I saw at the weekend, I would suspect Uruguay just that little bit tidier. But I think this has the capacity to be a great game as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely looking forward to that one as well. Which is coming up in 20 minutes time, so that's gonna be a fun one. We'll have it going. You have to watch it. Interestingly enough, with this tournament, my number one critique of the tournament is that the South American Rugby Organization seems to be batshit.
Well, yes, they are not making it easy to watch.
They have the highlights are available on YouTube, and they're farcically bad highlights. Like the game between Uruguay and Brazil, where each side kicked, Uruguay kicked 6 penalties and Brazil kicked 4. Yeah. And then outside of that, there was 1 try each. There were 3-minute highlights, which was just kick, 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 kick. You got no insight into what was happening in the game. They wouldn't even show the penalties. It was just kicker kicks kick,
Yeah.
Next highlight, kicker, kicks, kick.
Yeah, that is it.
Next
that is
highlight,
not
kicker,
ju-
kicks,
to be,
kick.
In defense of the South American guys, they are not the only ones at that. I've seen Pro 14 highlights that are that bad. I've seen the Challenge Cup, the highlights of the final. There was a Bristol one that was 3 minutes again, and it was a load of kicks as well. I made the point before, when I rewatch a game, if I have it recorded, I will very often skip over the cheap 3-pointer or the in front of the post conversion and rewind to rewatch beautiful sequences of play, even if they don't result in a try. It's like we have very different definitions of what highlights mean in terms of rugby.
It's just the other thing about this, like they've essentially hidden this competition. It's available to watch, and if you download their app, which I have done, on your phone, and then you can watch it, which is great. But it's like, why on earth should you have to download an app to watch this? You should be trying to get eyeballs on this. You've international rugby, you've massive populations. You should be broadcasting this on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere, and getting it out there, and then getting good highlights packages together so people might actually take an interest. And that aspect of it is frustrating, obviously. But I digress. It has been a great competition so far, and it'll wrap up this Sunday. Chile take on Brazil. That is this Sunday at 2 o'clock local time in the afternoon, which would be 6 o'clock our time. And that's going to be in Montevideo. They're all in Montevideo in Estadio Charuja, I guess.
Charuja,
and the Chile-Brazil game that we open with is exciting. It's the best chance, perhaps, of a Chilean victory if they don't go and beat Uruguay tonight.
Yeah, well, it would be nice to see Chile just be calm and be disciplined and allow Brazil to penalty them into the game. That could be a good way for them to win.
It's a lovely clash of styles, isn't it? A big dynamic, loose, ill-disciplined forward pack who are massive, and then a Chilean team who are quite disciplined and play quick rugby, but they're small. I wonder.
It's definitely it could be a ding dong game, and I'd like to see Chile do it just for rugby's sake, especially if Brazil don't tighten up.
Well, Brazil, like with that performance there this evening, they didn't deserve anything out of that game.
This is probably why they're fresh in my mind. It's why I'm really against the worst. Chile scored some pretty tries, put it up to Argentina, so I'm kind of there. I'm in their corner.
Yeah, they need to exploit the mistakes and keep the game quick and score some nice tries. That'll be followed up by Argentina A against Uruguay, and that's a fun game.
Kind of the game of the tournament. Really, these two.
That takes place at 4:45 local time, 8:45 our time on Sunday evening. And that's in Montevideo as well, and it's obviously a massive game for Uruguay. It'd be lovely to see them.
It's probably going to be the championship decider as well.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah. But can Uruguay in their tightness and their new men manage to put it up to Argentina even without Aratas and Berchessis and Kesslers?
It's possible they can. Obviously, Argentina will be flying a bit higher and feeling better about themselves.
Yeah, looks a little more settled
today. Yeah. But I'm hoping that calm and that assuredness remains in Uruguay, and that they can be the more disciplined side and try and take advantage of some Argentina looseness. That's got to be an avenue for them. It's definitely a good game anyway, and just great to see, as we said last week, great to see rugby back on another continent in the world after all of this mad year that it has been. It's great to see this tournament going ahead. Little gripe about the availability of it and the organisation and promotion of it, but still great to see the rugby happening on the field over there in Montevideo.
100%. Yeah, so looking forward to it. Great tournament.
Yeah. And with that then we will pivot on to club rugby, which obviously it's strange that this should be so low on the list, but we have had a Champions Cup final, and we have Champions Cup champions. Exeter are champions of Europe.
They are indeed, sir.
With a 31-27 victory over Racing in Ashton Gate in Bristol, bizarrely, was where the game was played. But it was a scrappy enough game. It was obviously a ding-dong battle. It was a great scoreline. We've seen some ugly finals. Certainly we were guilty of it. That our own tussle with Racing was nowhere near as entertaining a spectacle. But there were a lot of errors in this game, to be honest. There were a hell of a lot of errors, and all the tries seemed to come from errors. But Exeter managed to be the tighter, calmer team, and ultimately more physical, more disciplined, more organised.
I would say more clinical as well.
More clinical too.
Ultimately, the Racing sort of gave them a fair few ins throughout the game. I thought Iribarren obviously it's been long talked about. He had a rough time of it. They gave them a 12-point lead that they never quite recovered from at the very beginning of the game, and Exeter, just doing as they do, exploited the mistakes, and when Racing overplayed it, they were able to set up their situation. They were given a time of it in the breakdown, but ultimately they got through and got their tries. They're back their clinicality in the 22, and they are, without question, the most ruthlessly clinical red zone team in Europe.
Yeah,
and deservedly so.
Yeah, it was just, what was unfortunate was just how early the shape was taken. Like the very first try just set the tone and the picture for the whole game. You had Racing had an attacking line out on the 10-metre line, perfect clean ball, they go wide, Shaughnessy breaks a tackle, busts up into the 22, offloads from the deck to Finn in space, he kicks it away pointlessly, it gets fielded easily, pressure relieved, Noel with an excellent clearing kick, and then Iribarren gathers it, doesn't even notice that all of his team are miles away ahead of him, throws it into himself. The only player within 20 yards of him is Noel, who tackles him.
How good was Noel, by the way?
Noel was fantastic. From minute 1 to minute 80, he was brilliant. But that was another example of it. It ended up getting isolated, turned over, penalty. They kicked the corner, maul try, 7-0, 8 minutes in.
That's what they do. Yeah, exactly. They ruthlessly exploit your errors and your mistakes, and that's what they did again.
But what Racing, as ruthless as they are doing that, Racing were showing some ability to turn one error into 5 in quick succession, and
that was the problem. Like what we'd said last week going into this game was that Racing needed to set the tone and needed to paint a new picture for Exeter, where they have to chase a game. They take the lead and they have to chase a game, and perhaps they were guilty of forcing it with that Finn kick, etc. Where they needed to just settle down and be happy where they were on the pitch. But they weren't able to do that. In fact, they gave away. As you say, they compounded their early mistake with another mistake. What I will say is those in goals were so short. I mean, they could have played this game anywhere in Europe, and the short in goals were a factor for that horrific Finn error.
That was on 12 minutes as well. They dummy the box kick, throw it to your unsuspecting 10 who's expecting the box kick, have him juggle and drop it, and then it was almost worse that they didn't score the try right then and there, because it took another 4 minutes and several penalties before Exeter, they finally got over the line.
Exeter.
That's worse for Racing. They had to go through 4 more minutes of defending rather than just giving the score to them straight away, which they may have as well have done after that play. But it was a manic start that kind of continued. That manic energy kind of persisted in Racing throughout the full 80, but they showed themselves to be the more dangerous side a lot of the time in terms of how they moved the ball. When they woke up after that 12-0 thing, they struck back straight away with probably the best try of the final.
Zebo's first.
The multi-phase, beautiful, pulled them this way, then that. It had all launched off kick return, which was run back very dangerously by Zebo and Finn. And then and Vakatawa actually as well getting in the mix, and Shat with an important intervention or a carry in that as well. But then Russell missed the conversion, which I think is the first conversion I've seen him kick in this whole tournament. Iribarren was claiming to have been nursing an injury of some kind, but he would have been taking that kick. But Finn
I'll tell you who would have been taking it is Machino, if Machino's on the pitch, and that was definitely a huge factor. An injured Iribarren, really, really struggling on the pitch, and then no Machino, no element of control in with that Finn, sort of high tempo madness. But they were able to put some nice attacking streaks together, and then it did become sort of a nice, interesting game, I thought.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, well, certainly after the Imov try, which got it back to a one-score game.
Piece of play.
Imov is a Rolls Royce of a player. We were singing his praises last week. He played a tremendous game, even in a losing effort there again. He slotted in at scrum half after Iribarren was hit late and managed to spot the Exeter guys breaking early and just go in under the posts untouched.
Yeah, but it was done with speed. It was done with speed, constant recycling, very quick ball, danger everywhere, huge amount of Racing backline, the whole backline pouring forward onto you before they even get the ball. And that just attracts the eyeballs of the defence, and Imov just made hay in that one. And then at that stage it was a ding dong battle. But then crucially, and this is something that Racing did all the time, which is something that we said that they absolutely can't do because Exeter will kill you, and they gave them the in. Finn Russell tried a speculative grubber and it was blocked because Exeter are wise to it. And then Exeter, they're almost like we've made this comparison with rugby teams before, but sort of the Khabib-esque factor. I mean, like Khabib being the MMA fighter fighting this week who just hugs guys and controls them and he doesn't really strike, doesn't do the stand-up thing, but just gets a hold of them and constricts them like a boa constrictor. And the speed at which when he gets an opportunity to get on top of you, he instantly is on it. And that was where Exeter were right before half-time. Blocked kick, instantly were on it. They managed to
recognised those key moments in the game to score, and they did put them through loads of phases before Williams crashed over for that try. But then what's even worse is if you go back to the phase before Finn kicks it, like they're at a breakdown on the left hand side, they spin it out, Finn drops the speculative kick because it's all covered, but Iribarren didn't look right at all. They had a 4-on-1 on the short side and around 20 metres of space to work it, and they came the other way. They just, and like it's been a consistent bugbear of mine because I think Exeter actually don't resource the short side. We were saying that their defence isn't actually that great, and we saw a lot of glimpses of that in the final. Their defensive system is suspect and can be found out, and where it's most suspect is how they resource the short side on quick ball. They don't. They are frequently under-resourced on the short side, and you need to be able to target it, and Racing didn't, and it was mainly Iribarren in that first half because he was so at sea and kind of pasturing. He was just abdicating responsibility, giving the ball to Finn and then chasing it. And he didn't look up and recognise a chance to score a try, and that could have been a difference just before half time. Could have made a difference.
It was definitely a massive play, there's no question about that. But then you talk about the just making hay from an Exeter point of view. The block comes in on the kick, and then instantly, like lightning, they're on it. They move quickly, they set up their picture, and then they calm down, paint their picture, down, and they're so clinical. They're like you talk about that error from Racing. That's the difference between the two teams in a nutshell. Opportunity for Exeter, they're slow, but they get it done. Racing, perhaps a little too hectic. Perhaps Iribarren being injured is just looking for his 10 rather than looking to make a play.
Exactly.
And
it was that's manic. The difference. It was helter-skelter stuff from Racing throughout. And even though they did put together some lovely scores, and Zebo had his best performance in a Racing shirt, to be honest.
I've never seen it. He was
up for it. He genuinely was. He looked like he really, really wanted it, and I'm sure he's absolutely gutted to have lost it after the 2-try final performance. It was brilliant, but by and large, they were just too manic, too crazy, too wild to get anything done. And then even in the second half, when they did start like a house on fire, they managed to get themselves into good territory. Imhoff breaking up the left wing. Slade, very, very lucky in one of the moments of controversy of the final. Slade swinging arm high tackle on Imhoff. Probably should have yielded a yellow card, didn't, was a penalty only, and then 2 minutes later he was under the posts scoring from the intercept, which is obviously a bit of controversy, but the point is they shouldn't have thrown that intercept after getting themselves back into position. Finn throws a speculative pass across his own 22 and it's picked off by the once again brilliant Noel, who was alive to it. These are the swings. It was just evident from that moment, like that Slade try was ultimately the back of the game being broken, even though Racing did work very, very hard and managed to get their try back.
They just never could quite get back in touch. I mean, Russell's getting a lot of heat for that. I think he had a very up and down game. He threw a very similar pass off his left hand for Zebo's opening try.
He's like it's his game. Like he's going to throw those passes, obviously. But like Noel did the homework and obviously picked it off.
Noel read it. I think Ron O'Gara was on off the ball, and what he was saying about it was like if he had it back, rather than not throw the pass, if he had it back, he would have recognised it was a kick pass. It was a crossfield kick that should have been played. There were numbers and space out there, but with Noel, you just can't. You can't underrate the Noel's reading of the game. You're not going to make a fool of him just as easily as he made a fool of O'Flaherty in the first half.
It was O'Flaherty in the first half on the other wing, and that was kind of the difference between the international calibre and the not international calibre. Noel, wise to what Russell's trying to do, done his tape and picked off a game-winning score in what it turned out to be.
Was brilliant. He really could have been man of the match. He was sensational.
That being said, Racing still had the chance at the very end. 71 minutes, Tomas Francis binned off the bench for batting down Machino's attempted pass as they were attacking the line. And oddly, they elected to not kick a penalty from an acute angle to start the phase off, which is fine. I don't mind that if you want to work the corner.
That was a bugbear of Rogers. It was an interesting one. That whole dynamic when they got the penalty. It's a 2-point game, or perhaps even a 1-point game at the time.
Like that,
and Racing get a penalty, and so they decide not to kick the shot from the corner flag. worst case scenario, if you do go for it, you're going to get the ball back from a 22. I thought it wouldn't have been a terrible play to go for it, but they decided to go from the corner, which is by no means a terrible play either.
Yeah.
But then what happened? From my point of view, it's like once you've made that statement, then you're in go for it mode, and
they never did.
Finn Russell, I think, touched the ball. They had about 16 or 17 phases before the turnover, which has borne some controversy, but I think unjustly.
They shouldn't have been attacking the way they were. They were one-off runners and pick and jam guys, and it was a class and carry that got turned over eventually. But it's like, you're against 14 men here. You're racing. You play with Finn Russell. Work the numbers if you're going to go for a try. They were fearful. Or drop into the pocket and chip the three-pointer. Either of those are the options. They were fearful
to do either of them. Yeah. And Finn touched the ball once in the whole sequence. As opposed to trying to move around the 14 men, and then Exeter dealt with it and they swallowed it up. And Sam Hidalgo-Klein of all men got a big steal.
And turned it into the game-winning kick.
People are saying it's a side entry. I don't think so. I think that when the try line is obvious, it's not the hindmost foot, it's the try line.
Yeah,
and he's kind of got 1 foot on the line, 1 foot off the line. I think he's probably good.
He's fine. I think the onus is on Racing to not be in that channel. That's the point.
Nige caused the controversy by first saying hands off, and then giving him a penalty, which is obviously not great. But then it's like, I think he actually landed on the right decision. But as you say, I think it's on Racing to not do that when they have the ball and the game-winning chance.
The game-winning chance and the extra man, and they used none of that. And the more mature, more clinical side took the game. 31-27 in the end, with a penalty at the last play to push that score out.
Listen, it's a massive congratulations to Exeter. What a journey! What a journey they've been on in 10 years to have promotion, and they've painted, like we talked about George earlier in the program, they've painted almost a Georgian picture in terms of that English club rugby and now European club rugby, where they are ruthlessly clinical, and if you're a loose side and you make mistakes, they're just going to punish you. They're going to get into your half and they're going to just hold that ball, and the way they carry, even upright and aggressive and into you, they impose their physicality on you. They mind the pill so well, and I don't think it can be overstated that the great club culture that they have, but the amount of drilling and the amount of focus and the amount of drive and energy, as well as anything else, but in particular the focus it takes and the comradeship it takes not to make those errors, to be so totally dialed into each other and trusting of each other that you can go in high in the contact and you know your latcher's there to drive you over, that you're always minding the pill, that you know nobody else is going to turf the pill, that every time they get there, like outside of there, I thought, at times they lacked a bit of creativity. They perhaps might have struggled to get in there if Racing hadn't given them the ins that they gave them. But once they got into that 22, they were able to ruthlessly exploit Racing's Racing's errors and Racing's mistakes.
Racing's errors are what played them into the game. That is the one concern. Like, they are European champs, so they don't have many concerns, and they're going for a double now as well. But there was certainly a sequence of play. I think it was, but there was. The Shah try that he got at 50 minutes to bring it back to 28-24, which is a one-score game, and that from that point on for the next 15 minutes, it was mostly Exeter with the ball in the middle third trying to break down Racing, and from there they really looked bad at it. They didn't know what they were doing with ball in hand. Kept getting turned over, but then Racing kept botching that and giving it back to them. But it was a whole sequence of play where it was just...
Rob Baxter said it wasn't the highest standard game of the season, and it wasn't fun for him to watch because they weren't actually. Racing did their homework and defended quite well in that channel, and they just weren't able to quite get the in that they needed to get into the 22, except when Racing overplayed the ball, at which point they were ruthlessly clinical at doing so.
From the 22,
against a side that's not making as many errors, they have a big task potentially, depending on how Wasps look coming up this weekend. They're going to have to just be that little more creative, stand that little bit deeper, get Noel on the ball a little more, move them around and try and find more avenues to get into that 22 where they can paint that unbeatable picture that they love to paint when they're in there.
For sure. But with all that said, I think a hefty congratulations to Rob Baxter and Exeter for this. It's been a long time of building. They have paid their dues in many respects. They've been the nearly men in many years gone by. They've wanted Europe for so long. And yeah, finally they managed to be the more disciplined side, be the more professional side in final day. But also they've led a great campaign. They were unbeaten.
They've unquestionably been the best side in Europe this year. They have an element to their game. They have a comradeship and a discipline. That no other side in Europe has had this year. Saracens weren't too far away, I don't think, actually. We saw them contain Racing's attack a lot better than Exeter did, but Saracens, by contrast, weren't clinical. Racing gave them just as many ins in that game as they gave to Exeter, but Saracens kicked 3-pointers. They were ponderous. I mean, Zebo had a couple of knock-ons in zone 22, which amounted to just the 6 points. But Exeter, understanding their strengths, they have a great understanding of themselves, managed to exploit those errors to the maximum value and rock up 31 points and hold on to the win, and fair play to them. Congratulations. They're the best team in Europe this year, no question 100%. About it.
And minor congrats as well to Simmons at number 8, who grabbed a try in the final and was top try scorer for the tournament, which is a brilliant stat. And also to Simmons, the 10, who had the best kicking stats. The two brothers absolutely lighting it up in Europe as well. So yeah, mighty congratulations to Exeter. And yeah, European champions 2020, fair play.
Yeah, super win, and congratulations to them. Now, can they go and do the double?
This is the question. We move on to the Premiership Final, which we just got the news today, the great news today, that it will be Exeter v Wasps, not Exeter v Bristol, who had stood by, who would manage to make the final despite losing the semi-final by 40 odd points, which would be a very bizarre thing had that gone ahead. But no, Wasps have been given the all clear to play, so that match will go ahead. It'll be on Saturday at Twickenham at 6 p.m. So yeah, that is absolutely good news. Just in terms of a few stats, I was doing a bit of research on this game. It's very interesting on all the key stats that you would go to, things like tries scored, points scored, penalties won, penalties conceded, passing. All of these stats, they are pretty much equal on all of them across the season, both these sides. There are two stats, one each, where there's a difference. Exeter have a 99% goal kicking record in the Premiership this year.
Jesus Christ.
99%.
But you know what that is? They don't take the risks.
Exactly.
If they're ever in a position where it's a 50-50 shot, they go, no. We're going right to the corner and setting up our picture and scoring a try. And if you give us another penalty in the corner, we'll tap and go and we'll score that way.
Yeah, that's where that has come from. Whereas Wasps with their 92% kicking, which is actually really good anyway, but it looks abject comparatively. And then the other one, which I found surprising, is Exeter only have 84% scrum success rate this season, whereas Wasps have 92%, and that is the one area where
the scrum success stat I wouldn't read too much into.
No, I know, but it was just I wouldn't have cited that as a great strength for Wasps, and I would have had it as a great strength for Exeter. So it was just a curiosity. But in all other stats, they have been evenly matched this season, and in terms of just the form, like Wasps have been in flying form since lockdown. They've looked fantastic, to be honest. They absolutely did a job on Challenge Cup champions Bristol in the semi-final, put them to the sword very ruthlessly.
100%.
And yeah, it'll be a big task for their pack. We don't quite know who will be available or unavailable. Obviously, all those COVID they had, I think 8 players or 7 players test positive, undisclosed. Don't know who those guys are.
How long ago was that even? Is there a 10-day factor that'll come in? Can some of them come back if they tested negative? It's hard to know.
Tough to know who will be available or who won't be. As well, Fekatoa I think won't be available due to injury. However, a slightly simpler diagnosis, but obviously Wasps' preparation will have been affected by this kind of COVID thing and the doubt that was cast over their even participation in the final. But it would be nice to see them get close to their full side out and ready and make a proper game of it, because they really have looked like the form team since lockdown.
Yeah, they've had a lovely polish to them, the Wasps. They've landed at a lovely balance, and it remains to be seen how disrupted that has been, obviously, or will be by the COVID situation, which is obviously extremely unfortunate. But at their best, they're a phenomenally balanced outfit. I mean, you look at their front row, it's entirely pushed. Brooks, as you say, you were talking about scrum success. Brooks tight head, very, very solid, very easy to lock it down. Hence the success. They're just not being stopped on their own scrum ball. A classy engine room with Rowlands, who's going to be in Wales. He's gonna come and be a Welsh player, along with a Test rugby player, along with Joe Launchbury, who we all know about is brilliant.
Yes.
And then that back row, Thomas Young, Jack Willis, Brad Shields, sensational.
Dynamic.
Willis in particular looks one of the best players and one of the best form back rowers in the world, and he's looking like a guy who's going to go straight into an England team, an England team with Currys and Underhills in his current position.
It's true. He's been a phenom, and they are very dynamic as a back row. They really do range in the loose, and they like this Wasp side, especially since lockdown. But even before they were Wasps have traditionally been a run the ball, attacking kind of quick tempo team. And this back row are kind of epitomes of that. They are like Jack Willis is a terrier in the Titan in the breakdown, but with the turnovers he provides, they can link and distribute. All three of those back row players can distribute, but then they have Umanga and Gopperth at 12 kind of helping out the young man, dual distributor thing, very Aussie look to that 3/4 line.
And even Dan Robson at 9, what a fantastic pace he drives. I mean, Wasps are a team that their identity was running rugby, and this year they've managed to actually build the foundations around the running game without losing the running game. So now they have set piece strike plays, they're rock solid at line out and scrum, they're breakdown terriers, they defend really well, and their attack is still as lethal as ever. Obviously Malachi Fekitoa went down in that semi-final.
That is a big potential loss for them. I don't know that he will be available. In fact, I suspect he won't be. And in fact, there was another one of their centres was previously injured. I can't remember. Yes, Ryan Mills, who's another one of their centres, has a broken foot. Fekitoa had a groin strain.
There's no chances he can just run off the broken foot. No,
run off the broken foot or the groin strain. No, no. Hopefully, I don't know who's going to slot in at 13, but Fekitoa has been really their rock at 13 as far as shutting down the wide play of other teams. He's been brilliant at it.
No question.
And if he's not available, he will be missed and will weaken them.
Proper lethality in that back three. Bassett and Kibarigi on the wings are lethal, and Manozzi's great as well.
Yeah, they have been finishing tries for fun, and tries like you said, they've been kind of created a bit tighter than that. They look like a hefty team as well. They really did make mugs of Bristol. Who are kind of like a little lacking in their development in terms of the pack strength. Wasps really bullied them for that, put them to the sword, physicalised them in the tight, and then made them fed off their errors. They won't quite be able to do that against Exeter, who are obviously a big mean pack as well. But they definitely have what it takes to go toe to toe more than most Premiership sides. Exeter normally do just for most Premiership sides with the physicality, but maybe this Wasps side can make a final of it.
Well, it's an interesting one from their point of view in terms of how they approach the game. Obviously, from a defensive point of view, the task obviously becomes massive once you get into your own 22. And Racing made a game of it in that regard because they've jacklers everywhere. They've Cameo Shaz. Wasps have a couple. Thomas Young and Jack Willis. Absolutely,
that's got to be the game. Is chop and poach.
But it's not quite their game. I mean, certainly with the two 10s, with the Umanga and Gopperth, you want to see those guys control the game, make sure that they tighten up the discipline, and don't give Exeter the ins that Racing gave them. Start like a house on fire, put Exeter under pressure, put yourselves in the right area of the field, make Exeter exit, make them slow to get into the game, and then be clinical when you get your opportunities. And that's something that Wasps have been so good at, is being clinical. And that's what they have to bring. And like, we're waiting to see someone paint the picture of taking the lead against Exeter, and Exeter hasn't happened yet. They haven't let it happen. They've been down in there, and they've always got that opening score. Can Wasps be the side to put that pressure on them? It remains to be seen. Yeah,
it does remain to be seen. Certainly from Exeter's point of view, they have a task at hand in terms of just managing their emotional peak, getting down from the final last week and getting up for this one.
Leinster teams in the past have struggled with that.
We've struggled, the double was proved very evasive for a long time. So the doubles are very tough to do, and especially with this tight turnaround between finals, don't know how that's going to be affected. Obviously they have a clean bill of health as far as COVID is concerned. Rob Baxter was gleefully reporting midweek by contrast with Wasps, so we don't know what kind of Wasps we're going to see because of that. But Exeter, we know the Exeter game very well. They will be trying to paint their very typical picture, use their very kickers. They have Slade and Hogg in the back line to partner with their halfbacks and try and share some of that load as far as kicking them out of their territory is concerned. They will hope to be a little bit more effective with the ball in hand in the middle of the pitch than they were in the final. They'll certainly hope to find some avenues, especially if Fekitoa isn't there. They'll want to test that 13 channel, whoever is in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Gets laid on the ball in the middle of the pitch, and he can either feed Noel or he can drop it on the toe.
They want a little more of a control factor. Like last week, they were excellent in the chaos. They were excellent at maximising the chaotic Racing plays at times and managing to end up exactly where they want to be.
Yes.
But in this game, I suspect Wasps possibly a little tighter. In fact, a lot tighter, you would hope, than what Racing were bringing last week. So the question for Exeter on defence becomes contain them. Don't give them the opportunities that they were giving Racing. I mean, they shipped I don't know how many tries last week. They got to get in on top of them. They got to physicalise them. They got to make sure that the likes of Brad Shields aren't getting clean go forward ball.
Yeah.
They got to be alert on set piece. I mean, Wasps like to attack in around that 10-12 channel.
They do. Yeah.
So whether it's Devoto, I think it'll probably be Devoto this week.
Yeah.
I don't think Witten had his best game in the European final. So if Devoto's coming in at 12, he's got to be very, very sharp defensively, because Wasps love to attack. They love to find holes in that centres. They try it off first phase, they try it off third or fourth phase. And they're Uruguay are scoring a try beneath me. That's what sort of distracted my train of thought. But what was I saying?
We're talking about attacking down 12 channel.
Yes, no, down that whole centre channel. Yes. That's where Wasps love to flood, love to make their initial line break, and that's an area that Exeter, really more so than against Racing, where everything goes wide, they're going to have to tighten up in that midfield. Yeah, you want
guys like Vermeulen and Ewells plugging those holes, because there are two 10s opposite them in Gopperth and Umaga, so there's options either side of the set piece. You need your flankers there bailing out your back line as far as tackles and in terms of coverage, which should be simple enough to do, because Exeter don't tend to push up that ferociously. They tend to have a soft enough line speed that's good for cohesion. When you find space against them, it tends to be either on short sides or out further wide, so they should be trying to plug that hole. But I would like to see them really pressure, particularly Umaga more than Gopperth, but both ideally when they're on the ball, and get their forwards winning those contests in the tight and making it tough. Well,
if their forward pack can win the day, that'll be massive for them. I mean, Jack Willis was so good against Bristol, and then Wasps with a little bit of space and a little bit of time off turnover ball will punish you. So from an Exeter point of view, if you can get on top of them and put them under pressure by the penalties off them, get your picture going down into their half from an early point of view. I mean, they've run through this a lot of times. They know what they're doing, and they're nigh on impossible to stop if they can get that going. But you know, that pitch that we've been talking about the whole time, if Wasps can come out like a house on fire. You know, we've seen teams struggle with when they've had the COVID issues across all sports. You know, I think Liverpool had an awful game in their first game post-COVID in the camp.
Yes.
I think that the Tennessee Titans in the NFL are the only ones to buck the trend who've come out since their COVID diagnosis and played class games.
Yes, but it's tough to say. It is a caveat with Wasps. It's definitely going to affect their preparation. The fact that their participation was in doubt. But hopefully we see the best Wasps we can see. We see an Exeter who are bulling for a double, and hopefully you see a great game of footy after a long season.
I said last week that Wasps would give Exeter a better game than Racing. Racing did end up giving them quite a game. You know, they managed to score more tries than I thought they would. But ultimately, they allowed Exeter in early in the game, and then that was the proving difference. If Wasps can get what we wanted Racing to do, what we think is the picture to really challenge this Exeter team if they want to be double champions, can Wasps get on top of them in that first quarter? Can they paint them that difficult picture of being behind in a game, not being allowed to settle and control the pace as they love to do? That's the big question mark for me, but we shall see. In terms of predictions, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick my neck out a little and say I'm going to back Wasps to get it done. Despite the Fekitoa and despite the COVID, I think they are going to attack them. I think they have looked...
Attack the short side?
I would hope that Robson will identify the short side and attack it and score off it. But I think Exeter aren't invulnerable. I think their defence can be suspect. I think their attack isn't as clinical. In the middle of the field. I mean their multi-phase in the middle of the field is a little bit sluggish. And I think Wasps have looked the form side in this competition since lockdown.
They have.
So I'm going to back them to get it done. I also think that doubles are elusive things. And it's tough to get back up to the pitch of a week after a final. So I'm going to say Wasps.
Well, for colour as much as anything else, but also if you put a gun to my head and said, who do you think's going to win? I'd say Exeter.
Yeah.
I think I said it. I think what I said during lockdown as a Leinster fan is if we lose to Saracens, nothing will stop Exeter from winning the double, and that's been correct so far.
Yes,
and,
you're going to stick with it.
I'm going to stick with it. I don't think Exeter can be stopped. I think their clinicality is too great. Although as good as Wasps have looked, the stars have not aligned for them. The COVID situation, the Fekitoa situation, it might just be too much to overcome.
Might be.
And I think that Exeter, they're in a fantastic place. They've had no COVID issues. I think one of the underrated things about Exeter is just how strong their club culture is.
Yeah.
Their togetherness and their unity as a squad.
It's
they all buy into
definitely something they have over Wasps currently. Wasps, the Coventry Wasps, the Rico Wasps.
I just think they have great grit and soul to them, and I think they're going to do it. I think this is their year.
Okay. Well, hopefully, Jimmy Gopperth, man of the match, 28 points.
We shall see.
We shall see. Yeah. So with that, we will move on to Super Rugby Unlocked down to South Africa. We had round 2 results in the books, and we have round 3 coming up this weekend. So yeah, as far as round 2 is concerned, we had the Cheetahs getting a big win over the Bulls, 19-17. Great game that was. And we had the Griquas losing at home 21-27 or 27-21 to the Pumas.
Great performance from the
Pumas. And we also had the Stormers getting it done in their first game of this comp, 23-17 win over the Lions at Newlands, which is great to see Newlands back as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so those were the 3 results. We're just going to kind of go through the teams individually from a point of view of those games. So first off, we had the Cheetahs, who are sitting pretty after 2 rounds atop the table with 9 points so far. They just managed to get it done despite fading a little bit towards the end of that game. Certainly the Bulls came back at them, and they didn't look like it was under control in the second half. But they managed to grit it out, which was very encouraging for them. Very tough blow to see Ruan Pienaar go down. That was one of the uglier sides of that whole game.
Yeah, it was actually a nasty tackle from Van Staden.
It was one of my least favourite plays. It's actually something I wish was punished more. I think the ref in question had a really poor game at the breakdown. I think he didn't officiate it. He allowed kind of bedlam to go on. But like the offence, when you look at what happened to Pienaar, it was only pinged as a penalty, which it undoubtedly was, but it should have been more, because he dove over the top of a dead ruck. Off his feet, not contesting for the ball,
taking out the scrum,
and played the 9. But not only played the 9, he dived at his leg and blew his ACL out. That's one of the more illegal, one of the more egregious things you can do. Like, there's 4 offences from a rugby point of view, as well as its captain and old man Pienaar, who you've just taken out. I think it could have been. There's an argument for a red card for it. It should have at least been yellow.
Well, there isn't an argument from the laws, unfortunately, unless you're saying he deliberately took him out, or tried to injure him. But I don't think he did. But it was a nasty one, and Van Staden, to be honest with you, was blessed to be on the pitch.
He was the beneficiary of the looseness of the ref. Like, he was guilty in most breakdowns.
He was all over the shop as Van Staden, no question. Actually, there was a nasty one to Cheslin Colby at the weekend as well, where he's in the action of scoring a try, was kneed by someone.
It's the same thing. Like, I think the rugby laws and World Rugby have tried in the last few years to try and clean up the game and make it safer in a few key areas. The collision in the air, the 2 guys going up for the high ball, obviously very dynamic, very dangerous situation. So they brought in law changes to make it safer and clarify it for refs, and they've done a good job of that. Now in this season they're doing the same thing with breakdown in terms of entry points, in terms of staying on your feet, and that's all very well and very good. But there are a few little areas of foul play, and like you were calling for earlier on, just heads up sympathetic refereeing has to kind of, like, you don't necessarily need to change the laws, just interpret them correctly in terms of getting justice. The diving over the top and injuring the 9 of a dead ruck, that is a criminal play that should go punished by a card. And similarly, that one, like Cheslin is the latest example, but like the try scorer getting kneed by a defender sliding in with no attempt to tackle because the try's already scored. The only objective for that player in that moment is to get a cheeky knee in on the try scorer. And we've seen, like, Conway got his Australia tour a couple of years ago, got ended by a brutal collision like that with Dane Haley-Petty. You see it constantly because it goes unpunished. At the very least, it should be a restart with a penalty to the team who scored the try. at most, I would kind of like to see cards being introduced for it, or sightings being introduced for it.
I think the momentum is certainly shifting that way, yes, and you've seen a lot of people giving out about this stuff on Twitter as Chile score a try and get back into the game against Uruguay. Sorry, we're watching live here. For those on the shorter videos, we're watching live the America's Rugby Championship. Good to see Chile score.
Yes.
But yes, back to the Cheetahs, and despite that injury to Ruan Pienaar, I thought they had a lovely game. They were much the better team, especially in that first half. They did let the Bulls back into it, and I'm thankful that they just about managed to survive it in the end. But they had some lovely passages of play. I thought Bernard Jansen van Rensburg was great in there with Steyn.
Partnered well with Steyn. They look very similar, both physicality and hair wise, but they both combined well.
Yeah, and Yar on the right wing linking up with Speckman for that try. It was just a lovely set play, and was more. They brought more offensive dynamism in that one move to the game than the Bulls probably brought in the whole 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So thoroughly deserved. We had said that the Bulls, they might struggle up in Bloemfontein. A lot of sides might struggle up in Bloemfontein, and the Chiefs, they have that chip on the shoulder. They're playing beautiful rugby. The Cheetahs, sorry, they're playing beautiful rugby. They brought a classy brand and some clever acquisitions into their squad. Yeah. And shout out Tian Schoeman as well at 10, because he's had a wonderful start to the season.
He has, yeah. He had a few looser plays in the second half, which the whole team were guilty of, but by God, that first half he looked like a Springbok number 10. Yeah. Like, he certainly looked more like a Springbok number 10 than Elton Yankees. He's not soft. He makes big physical hits. He carries to the line. He has a good passing game, a good kicking game. Between himself and Frans Steyn at 12, they have serious bootage in that back line, as well as just a lovely tempo that they play with. The Cheetahs are all excitement and
they're making the case. They're making the case for themselves.
They are sitting atop, and Super Rugby Unlocked, they are 9 points through 2 games and sitting on top, and they're a good value for it. The Bulls, by contrast, 5 points through 2 games, I believe, is what they have. Which is they're lucky enough to have, because they were pushed by the Griquas in week 1. They were very pedestrian again in this performance, and despite the fact that Dwayne Vermeulen managed to wake up to get nearly game stealing steal, which turned into the try that they couldn't quite convert.
No, there was a looseness to them. I thought there was one play that almost typified it. I mean, you're talking about a pack which has great individual players. And a 10 who's so experienced that it should be, classy, clinical, difficult to deal with 10-man rugby. Is what it should be. But what it is just so loose and poor. I mean, the Chiefs were at the pitch of the game, as we've been talking about all game, where the Bulls were not. There was one example in the second half when the Chiefs were dominating a scrum. And I was
Cheetahs.
The Cheetahs. I keep saying the Chiefs. The Cheetahs were dominating the scrum. And I was kind of wondering how this is happening, with the Bulls. They shouldn't be this bad. And then you watch the replay of it, and Dwayne Vermeulen, the whole back row, but Dwayne Vermeulen in particular, wasn't even pushing in the scrum. He was looking up, and then he actually broke and started jogging back before the ref's whistle had gone for the penalty. So
it's like absolute dialed out Dwayne going on right there.
Yeah, and he came into it great in the last 20, but just as a team with we talked about Exeter back in Europe. Having such a great club culture, I don't know that the culture in the Bulls is all that good, and they looked a bit shot, and they missed that. Chris Smith missed that kick at the end, but they no more deserve to get anything out of the game, really, despite a looser second half from the Cheetahs. The game was there for the taking from them, but they didn't have the gumption to go and get it.
Well, some of the talk after the Chris Smith thing is Mornay should have played the whole game. That's obviously crazy, and it's like, yeah, but Mornay is ancient. With respect to Mornay, he's ancient. If he has to play 80 minutes every time you're in a tough game, that's not a sustainable building block for the future. And then at halfback as well, Ambrose Papier and then Van Sale off the bench is so slow. I just don't know what they're doing with the ball. Certainly their ball in hand stuff, particularly in the first half, was abject. And especially by contrast, the Cheetahs were moving it with such clip and such aplomb.
But I mean, it could work. The Bulls could work if their pack were sort of playing with ferocity and with real physicality.
Well, when you look at some of the guys, like aren't Botha in there, Jenkins, Van Staden.
To be fair, Van Staden was playing with ferocity.
They have in there. There's no reason for them to look as abject as they do sometimes, and yet they were really not at the pitch of the game for most part in the first half. A few little doubts as well. I'm not sure if the centre pairing of Swart and Hendricks is actually linking that well, either on offense or defense.
Hendricks not a winger really. At the end of the day.
Hendricks is a winger.
He's just a winger. He's lost his pace.
That's exactly what he is. No, he's at 13.
Oh, he's at 13.
He's defending the 13 channel, which is questionable. So and obviously Gio Aplon being injured for them, that is a cost to them. That's going to affect their ability to play that running rugby.
Any counter-attacking game.
For
but
sure.
What I would love to see them be is just a little tighter, more physical, but not loosely physical. Not I'm giving penalties away physical. Tight and controlled physicality where you can impose yourself on a team and let Mornay guide you up the pitch. Protect Mornay and let him guide you up the pitch. It's not the prettiest form of rugby, but it's what the Bulls have at the moment that they're not bringing, and hopefully they can take those learnings.
And it's like they will never, as far as like they have such quality player for player that they'll never be fully out of it. Like they have such physicality that they can go on and win this competition still. They have 5 points from 2 games. They're not out of it, but certainly as of now they'll need to up their game quite significantly. And then we have the Pumas and the Griquas, who played a great contest as well.
I enjoyed it.
It was really fun, and the Pumas got the better of it, and they deserved it. The Pumas got their valuable win, which probably is good enough to see them secure not bottom in this kind of a bridge. Given the format, they're only playing each other once. It'll be tough for the Griquas to get that win back. The Pumas looked deserving of it. They scored the better tries. They came out, as we were talking again, the right pitch for the right game. The Griquas looked like they were a little sluggish after their great showing against the Bulls the week before. They didn't quite match what the Pumas brought in the first quarter.
So the try scored by Moritz on the right wing towards the end of the half was just a lovely score that deserved to win the game, where the Griquas by contrast were making mistakes and sloppily damn near failed to score the try that they did score.
That monstrous maul that drove over, and then did they ground it? I don't know.
It was a weird one to be sure, but over the course of the game I thought the Pumas were just more solid and were that 6 points better. I think Fuchs at 10 is a class player.
He definitely enjoyed playing at that level, as we suspected the week before when they were blitzed by the Cheetahs. He looked like a skillful lad who was kind of taken aback by this level and speed that he's not used to playing at, whereas this was much more his speed, his level, and he looked good. His little left-handed skip pass for that try in the first one was
classy play, classy touches all over.
And then by contrast with the Griquas, their halfbacks, I have their names down here.
Whitehead and Berger.
Sorry, yes. They provided very little control, and Whitehead in particular, the 10, was hiding out on the wing a lot on defence and missing tackles when it did get to him. The Pumas just made it tough for them. And certainly from the Griquas' point of view, the very first 3-pointer that they kicked, the very first play of the game, they managed to get themselves deep into enemy territory, got a penalty advantage, and then their 12, Vanderbank, made one of the ugliest plays I've ever seen, where he got the ball in a bit of space on the thing, tripped over himself, nearly fell over, and before he went to ground, kicked the ball away. And it was like, what is this? And it kind of set the tone for the rest of their afternoon, just bizarre, sloppy errors that went punished, because the Pumas actually came to play and really took that win. Curiously enough, 27-21, the exact same scoreline they beat the Griquas by at Griquas Park in last year's Currie Cup.
There you go.
Go figure. But the Pumas, good value for their win, and they have I think 4 points from their 2 games, which is good going.
Solid stuff.
Still in it. Still in the mix.
The Stormers opened their campaign with a nice home win against the competitive Lions, but once again they outmatched them. They'll be confident rolling into the weeks gone by. I actually missed this game live, so I've only seen the highlights. But they're a huge pack with the likes of Kitsoff and Mbonambi and Malherbe and Khaleesi. That's just a massive team. And I saw Warwick Gallant have some nice touches as well.
Lovely little half break for one of their scores as well.
And nice to see Herschel Yankees throwing a bit of a clutch pass for one of their tries as well. And just enough. The Lions had some very, very pretty moments. They scored a lovely, pretty try with a nice break. Elton Yankees' try that was made by the lad on the wing.
Even their first try to take the 10-3 lead in the beginning was fantastic as well.
They are bringing the speed. I like to see them bringing the speed
and bringing the width, which is good to see from them. The intercept from Yankees was a concern.
Unfortunate. Well, it was trying to bring too much speed and too clustered a zone. That ball needed to go deeper before it went wide, and it was just too much going on in there, and then Yankees kind of just throws the ball without looking, and then that's the game. Those are the margins. But there was a quality win for the Stormers, and I was happy to see it. And going on, we have the Sharks obviously, who had their good win last week and the bye in the week just gone, but the good win on opening weekend with the likes of Notcha and Boutalese and Van Heerden in that pack, who I think could I think themselves and the Stormers could be competing for it in the end.
They could.
We have a few fixtures heading up into next week. We have the Pumas against the Stormers. That's a big game for the Stormers. Can they kick on?
Yeah.
Or can the Pumas back up a win with a very surprising win?
Back-to-back wins. Certainly they're at home at Umbella Stadium. Friday kickoff is at 7 p.m. on Friday on that one.
Clashes again with the Scotland-Georgia game.
It always.
What are they doing with me? To me. The Lions and the Cheetahs are playing in Ellis Park on Saturday at 4:30.
That's going to be a cracker of a game.
It
Up
is.
at altitude, 2 running rugby teams, 2 cats.
A lot of fun, yeah, exactly. 2 cats. The Lions and the Cheetahs. Which one of these running rugby teams is going to cause the big boys the most trouble? Obviously, the Lions have had a rough start.
The Lions could win that game. They could win this game. The Lions have had the toughest start of anyone, and may have a bridge too far to recover their loss. Like, obviously, each team only plays each other once. In this, and they were unfortunate enough to have to travel to the Sharks and the Stormers to take them on, and they got 2 losing bonus points from those games, which in the context of the Currie Cup, which is the bigger competition, that's not a terrible result, and they're still in the mix for that. But for Super Rugby Unlocked, they really need to start winning with 5-pointers now to get themselves back into contention, and a 5-pointer is not out of question. It could be a case
5 points each, or no? It is the
3-try rule, but there's definitely tries out there up at altitude against the Cheetahs. But I'm looking forward to a high tempo game in Ellis Park between 2 great sides who want to throw the ball around.
Absolutely, no question. And then it rounds up with the Bulls against the Sharks, which is obviously a massive game as well. The Bulls, we've been given out there too loose. The Sharks are probably the tightest and most disciplined team in South Africa against possibly the loosest, but a team with a lot of physicality, and that's out in Loftus. I would make the Sharks the favourites, but the Bulls, with the players they have, Dwayne Vermeulen's, can they make something happen?
If they step up, they can definitely punish the Sharks. The Sharks are a little diminished on where we saw them at their pomp before lockdown. They've lost that lethal back 3 that they had.
They do. No Fassi, no Nkosi, no Mapimpi, and in their place an ancient Manny Lebok and an ancient JP Peterson.
Yeah.
Although Werner Koch looks like a result out there.
He does, yes. Good sevens convert. He got his first bit of meat in the first week. It's great to see. And this week, actually, it's the Griquas with a bye. They have to sit and think about what they've done. But so those are the fixtures coming up this weekend.
South African rugby boiling away nicely in the background.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, and with that we will just move on to just a few other games to watch around in the world, in the rugby world, I suppose. The Women's Six Nations getting underway.
That's restarting, absolutely,
Great to see. Obviously there is Pro 14 action this weekend as well, so there'll be a few games there. Top 14 as well. Mitre 10 Cup
still going on.
All of these events still going on very much in the background. But then also Premier 15s women.
That's the Women's Premiership.
The
Women's Premiership has gotten underway from the last couple of weeks, and so that tournament's ongoing. Great to see a professional league in the women's rugby. And that's all the rugby that's sort of going ahead in the background as well.
That is, and so I suppose before we wrap up this once again marathon session now.
They're getting so long. It's the COVID thing, man. That these games are compressing on top of each other, and we're having to talk about Six Nations and European finals and Bledisloes in the same week.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. How can we do justice to these games while watching class South American rugby in front of me? It's just the task is beyond us.
It sometimes is, but for one more week we have the rugby news of the week.
Yes,
and there is some news this week. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier on in terms of the Springbok rugby. We have Ruan Pinar and Gio Aplin out, set to miss the remainder of Super Rugby Unlocked and possibly more, both with worrying knee injuries.
They're both so good to watch.
Yeah, awful
in different ways,
in very different ways. But those were nasty injuries that were sustained in the last week of action. The big news, I suppose, from sticking with South Africa, is that the Springboks have pulled out of the Rugby Championship 2020. That news broke this week. It's tough to say whether this will be wisdom or foolishness in the long run.
It feels like superficially as a fan you want to see it happen, and it feels it feels almost fearful and not really with the right mindset that you want to have the Springboks to have. But by contrast, what they're saying is, we started our season so late. We would have to, for quarantine reasons, we have to fly out to Australia. We'd have to fly out to Australia and quarantine really from this week.
Yeah.
So they would have had 2 rounds in the books of Super Rugby Unlocked. Then once you get there, you're talking about bringing over the European players, which apparently was not going to be able to be done until round 2 maybe of the Rugby Championship. like we've been looking at this tournament, they still haven't really found who's going to play 10 in the absence of Andre Pollard. There's so many questions to answer. They're playing sides who are like, you look at the Bledisloe games, they're such quality.
Yeah.
And maybe they were just thinking, lads, this doesn't suit. You know, we could maybe play it in January. I know that's a bit odd, but we haven't got the time to put a squad together in this time, and that's what they're citing as their reason for doing so.
Yeah, like I see legitimate arguments all over that, and I trust Razzie's instincts a lot of the time, but it is a shame for the Rugby Championship itself and for rugby fans in general.
South Africa won the World Cup nigh on a year ago.
Is their first competitive test since then going to be against the Lions?
Well, it looks that way, man. It looks that way, and that is bizarre beyond reason. You know, to be deprived of watching the world champions for so long seems crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, it all sort of, we don't know if it's going to work out or not for them, but it's definitely a curiosity. But yeah, as you say, Razzie he's never backed out of a big decision.
No.
And he trusts his instincts, and he's saying this tournament wouldn't be good for us.
And
the way it's presented to him.
I'd be inclined to agree with him just on merit alone, because he's done
hasn't got anything wrong yet.
Done nothing wrong so far. But that is obviously huge news. That's the biggest news of the week. We also have Ryan Jones has quit his role as Welsh Rugby Union Performance Director after 5 years. And he will not be replaced, that is concerning. Those kinds of news things are concerning. So just there is no Welsh performance director.
Yeah, that's just Wales sort of perhaps tightening up their whole organisation in the absence of money. We saw they axed their sevens team.
Yes, trimming the fat.
That's concerning. Wales Rugby are talking like they need a bailout from the British government. So
it's concerning news,
definitely
for sure.
Bad news, and hopefully Ryan moves on to something pastures new. He was a great player in his day,
for sure. I wish him all the best, of course. We have other news. Rugby Europe has announced the suspension of all its matches. We suspected that this was going to be the case, but it did get confirmed. Georgia's Grand Slam will be mooted. They were on course for it. They had romped again through that tournament before it was put on hold in March.
This is because the whole of Europe is locking down again. So that's just the nature of it.
It's just everything's regressed as far as this pandemic.
We're currently in day 0. Well, actually, we're in minute 22 of a 6 week lockdown
in Dublin, in Ireland, anyway, as well. Yeah, so it's understandable as to why this is. It is obviously unfortunate. But there is now a plan for a reduced one location World Cup qualifying tournament in its stead for these teams. So that's good. It's good that the contingency is put in place, but obviously unfortunate that the tournament won't be finished. Then in other more positive news, this is always good news. Liam Williams, we mentioned him earlier on. Back playing. He's going to make his first appearance in months for Scarlets this weekend. First appearance in 7 months. Second appearance in 12. After he was ruled out of the World Cup after getting a bad injury. He's back, and that's obviously fantastic news for Wales and for rugby because he's a beautiful fullback to watch. Yeah, for sure.
Matt Tamua also in worse injury news. We spoke about this at the top of the show, but he's out for the rest of 2020 with that awful groin injury.
Yeah, you can see it coming just from the kick. It was an unpleasant one to watch.
But finally, to wrap up the Mammoth show, we have fantastic news, very good news that I was buzzing to see, which is that the British and Irish Lions are set to play a rare home test in Murrayfield against Japan next June before they set off.
Fantastic.
That's a good game, isn't it?
Fantastic stuff altogether. But good for Japan, good to give them that rare test they'll be buzzing for against the Lions.
Because they last time out, they played like a game against the Barbarians in Hong Kong.
Yes.
I'm like, no, this is better. Yeah, this is definitely better.
It's much better. It could have been Hong Kong again.
Sure. Like they very rarely play at home is the thing, but obviously with COVID and everything else, they just decided for the ease of it.
Just makes sense, yeah. But yeah, getting Japan involved in top tier rugby like this, obviously a great encouraging thing to do. But also, it's just going to be a pretty game of rugby. The Lions v Japan, we've never seen it before. What's it going to look like? We don't know, but it is going to happen.
It's hard to say. I tell you, as we're wrapping up the show, we're about to hit half time. I've been watching this Uruguay-Chile game. Feckin', I'm going to put this into the South America preview because Uruguay took a 13-0 lead and now Chile lead the game 17-16. They've come storming back. They're playing class rugby, and I cannot wait to watch the second half of this one. We are going to leave you so I can do just that. But yeah, it's been quite a show. They're not all going to be this hectic, but the way these fixtures are falling, we're trying to do them all justice. It is crazy. Yeah. But listen, if you have persisted this long, or if you've been clicking around, we'll do our best to timestamp them as best we can. Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully you got something out of it. And by all means, subscribe, like the video, share with your friends. All of that stuff really helps. Clicking the bell. I know you like to talk about the bell.
The bell, you can bell it, so you know when we do upload those shorter videos. But mainly just the comments.
Indeed,
those are the ones we want to hear. A bit of conversation.
Getting good conversations going is the highlight of doing this show. It's fantastic to see what you guys think and what your opinions are. And by all means, contribute to that comment section down below. But listen, with that, I think we have to call it a day. What a show!
Yes, indeed. If you've made it this far, geez, you have better stamina than we do.
Yeah, well, are you swaying like me?
Right, take care, guys. See you.
Bye bye.
All right, you're up.
Oh,
whoa,
no.
That was a tired throw.
It was, wasn't it?
Kicked off.
Oh, that was more aggressive, unlucky Benz.
Oh.
Sure, listen.